If you like the story, you can support the author on Patreon. Link is in the description.
Chapter 176, Chapter 174, Mirage Shot. Akin glanced at Fukui as he muttered, "Poor guy." The point guard from Yasenhai, who was tasked with keeping tabs on Tsuna, felt like a punching bag. It was crystal clear how wide the gap between Tsuna and Fukui really was. Akin's words echoed through Siren, but the team stared at the court with mixed emotions, unsure how to respond. Yasen, who usually forces opponents to surrender with their defense, got shut down, Izuki said, pushing down his surprise. Hyuga adjusted his glasses, a serious expression on his face. King of Kings, that title isn't just for show. Kyoshi nodded silently, glancing at Murasakibara, who struggled against Nijimura. Kyoshi felt conflicted, having initially looked forward to playing against Murasakibara with Siren. Kagami, too, could only gaze at Tsuna with a complex expression. While it held true that Tsuna stood as the heart of the Fukuda Sogo gameplay and strategy, the tides turned against Yasenhai even without him personally assuming Nijimura's role of containing Murasakibara. That fact, in itself, was a testament to the sheer strength of Fukuda Sogo. Kagami sighed, glancing at Alexandra. Her description of Tsuna as a monster rang true. He reflected, "I guess I got too comfortable after beating 2 Academy." He initially thought that by defeating Akin, he would have the same chance to go up against Tsuna. However, he seemed to be mistaken, as even when Tsuna hadn't showcased his all, Yasenhai was incapable of coping against them. On the side, Momoa cast a discerning gaze upon the Siren players, noting a surprising shift in their demeanor. Their earlier confidence appeared to have been soaked by the intensity of the game. Her eyes widened in realization, but their vibe doesn't scream discouragement. In place of the previously exuberant confidence, a profound and resolute determination emanated from the Siren players. Meanwhile, Kuroko detected an unusual gleam in Murasakibara's eyes. His own eyes widened in surprise, and with a composed demeanor, he declared, "This is not over yet." All eyes shifted towards Kuroko in collective surprise. They understood it was merely the second quarter, yet the dominance of Fukuda Sogo over Yasenhai was evident from every perspective. "They haven't thrown in the towel yet," Kuroko asserted, a statement that momentarily stunned the onlookers. However, their expressions soon softened into smiles, as if collectively acknowledging Kuroko's insight. Kagami, too, wore a faint smile as he pondered, "That's right. Besides, Tatsuya hasn't revealed that tricky shot yet." In the thick of the game, as minutes ticked away, Murasakibara kept pushing himself, facing challenges one after another. "I hate this," he muttered, his frustration clear for anyone to hear. Nijimura, catching wind of Murasakibara's discontent, remained on high alert. Despite hearing Murasakibara's discontent, Nijimura didn't let his guard down. Murasakibara, on the other hand, showed no signs of easing up the pressure. If anything, Nijimura felt it was becoming even more challenging to contain Murasakibara, especially as the complaints persisted. "He keeps saying he hates it, but why is he putting in even more effort?" Nijimura clicked his tongue, holding the ball in his hand. Observing Murasakibara closely, he noticed those pupils were gleaming with intense excitement. Nijimura's demeanor wavered as his gaze locked with a pair of intense eyes, sending an unexpected shiver down his spine. The revelation caught him off guard, an unsettling feeling creeping over him. As if his body reacted to shake off the disturbance, he instinctively passed the ball to Tsuna. "What?" Nijimura was puzzled by his own actions, looking at his trembling hands in disbelief. "Did I just get scared?" "Me?" Surprised by the sudden exchange, Tsuna caught the ball and looked puzzled at Nijimura. The conflict in Nijimura's expression was palpable, his inner turmoil evident in the unsteady pass. "Looks like Nijimura's part is wrapping up," he thought, stealing a glance at their positions before focusing on the ball in his grip. A smirk curved his lips as he effortlessly outmaneuvered Fukui's defense. Sensing the shift, Liu abandoned his defensive zone to impede Tsuna's progress. However, with a quick and graceful move, Tsuna delivered a precise pass to Mochizuki. The court seemed to freeze briefly as Mochizuki took the shot just before the three-pointer line. The coach from Yasenhai, her eyes scanning the court, sensed an unusual shift in the atmosphere. Murasakibara's imposing figure seemed to be at the center of it, casting a shadow of confusion over her face. She hesitated, a puzzled expression furrowing her brow as she considered calling a timeout to assess the situation. However, as her gaze lingered on the unfolding events, a sense of caution held her back, It was as if she instinctively understood that interfering might disrupt a delicate balance. Araki then sighed as she turned to Okamura, her voice cutting through the ambient noise. "Okamura, tell Himuro to step up." The unexpected command caught Okamura off guard, but he quickly grasped the urgency in the coach's tone. He hurriedly made his way towards Himuro, who, upon receiving the message, nodded with a determined look. As the attack shifted towards Yasenhai, the players from Fukuda Sogo sensed a change in the air. Instinctively, they understood that Yasenhai had something up their sleeves. The determined expressions on the faces of Yasenhai's players betrayed no sign of surrender, putting Fukuda Sogo's team on high alert. The tension heightened as Fukui seized the ball. In a seamless motion, he delivered a precise pass to Himuro, who had strategically positioned himself within his shooting range. Recognizing the threat, Mochizuki closed the distance with lightning speed, aiming to put intense pressure on Himuro. Yet, Himuro remained unyielding, his focus unwavering as his eyes sharpened with determination. With a graceful and elegant motion, he entered his shooting stance. From the audience, Kagami couldn't help but mutter in awe, "That shot is unstoppable." His eyes fixed on Himuro's poised form on the court. Meanwhile, Mochizuki's anticipated block took an unexpected turn. As Himuro gracefully released the ball, Mochizuki grinned, confident that he had the perfect timing to intercept. To his horror, though, the ball defied expectation, phasing through his outstretched hand as if it were a mere illusion. The audience's collective gasp echoed through the gym as the ball soared up into the air, smoothly swishing through the basket. Mochizuki turned, eyes wide, to follow the trajectory of the ball as it bounced weakly on the court after its triumphant journey through the net. What the hell was that shot? Shock registered on his face as he slowly turned to look at Himuro, disbelief etched in his expression. Meanwhile, Himuro, undeterred by the unexpected turn of events, wore a serious and determined expression. As Mochizuki stared in disbelief, Himuro declared, "This is not over yet." The intensity in his voice resonated on the court. Chapter 177, Chapter 175, The Ballet of the Burglary. "Does anyone else think that shot resembles Kuroko's phantom shot?" Takao pointed out, noticing a strong similarity between Himuro's shot and Kuroko's. "Come on, don't be stupid." Midorima dismissed Takao's observation with a shake of his head. Capturing Shutoku's attention, Midorima explained, "Firstly, Himuro didn't use misdirection like Kuroko did for his shot. And secondly, Himuro's shot didn't disappear before it got blocked. His shot phased through the block like an illusion," Midorima concluded with a serious expression. Surprise marked everyone's faces as they widened their eyes in astonishment at Midorima's revelation. Unable to contain his curiosity, Takao couldn't help but ask, "Then, how did he do that?" A similar discussion unfolded among Kaijo High, proudly sporting their jerseys after shedding their jackets. Kai's furrowed his brow, saying, "I'm not sure how he pulled off that shot. Though, I'm certain it's tied to his fake moves, he's pretty skilled at those." He continued, nodding in assurance. Himuro's deceptive plays were so convincing that they could easily trick most people into reacting hastily, and he exploited that recklessness. Kasumatsu agreed with Kai's explanation, finding it plausible that the mirage shot was linked to Himuro's style of play. On the court, everyone in Fukuda Sogo was surprised by Himuro's mirage shot. However, "All right, let's refocus." A casual voice snapped them out of their daze, and they regained their composure. They all turned their attention to Tsuna, who showed no signs of being bothered by Himuro's shot. This boosted their confidence. Noticing the renewed focus, Tsuna nodded and said, "Let's pick up the pace a bit." Their faces lit up, and they nodded in agreement. Haizaki, especially eager, licked his lips and eyed the Yasenhai players. As the game unfolded, Tsuna immediately surged forward with a burst of speed. "He's on the move!" Okamura yelled, prompting the Yasenhai players to respond with serious expressions as they fully concentrated on the approaching Tsuna and the scattered Fukuda Sogo players. Fukui was the first to feel the heat as he thought, "Darn, he's charging in with that speed. What's his plan this time?" Tsuna typically went up with a deliberate pace before changing it up after assessing the court situation. However, this time was different. And it sent a shiver down Fukui's spine as he moved in to impede Tsuna's progress. Tsuna halted momentarily as Fukui closed in. But in a blink, Tsuna expertly dribbled the ball through his legs, executed a swift crossover to the right, and dashed forward, leaving Fukui behind. Lu surged forward with Okamura repositioning, anticipating Tsuna might pass the ball to Mochizuki while keeping a watchful eye on Haizaki. As they expected, Tsuna passed the ball toward Haizaki, prompting Okamura to react as he had prepared. Lu smiled, saying, "We saw that coming." "I'm aware, but it won't change anything," Tsuna replied, catching Lu off guard. However, it didn't shake Liu's confidence in Okamura. He repositioned himself, returning to his defensive zone while closing slightly toward the basket. Holding the ball in his hand, Haizaki took a deep breath, muttering, I should be relaxed then." The court hushed as Haizaki began dribbling the ball, each movement slow and elegant. Okamura, who was tasked with marking him, was taken aback. There was a strange familiarity to Haizaki's moves, but Okamura quickly dismissed the notion, thinking, "It can't be." Undeterred, Haizaki continued his graceful display, striding to the left with elegance. Okamura reacted swiftly, adjusting his position accordingly. However, to his horror, Okamura witnessed Haizaki's figure vanish into thin air, only to reappear in his initial position like a fleeting illusion. How? The sudden maneuver left Okamura wide-eyed in shock, questioning the very reality of what he had just witnessed. Without missing a beat, Haizaki seamlessly transitioned into his shooting motion. Okamura suppressed his shock and hurriedly closed the gap to block him. But it was too late. With a fluid motion, the ball left Haizaki's hands, gliding through the air and effortlessly landing in the net. Okamura was left stunned by Haizaki's elusive and skillful play. "It's undeniably my moves." Himuro bore the brunt of the shock, witnessing Haizaki replicate his own techniques. Although Yasunhei was aware of Haizaki's uncanny ability to steal someone else's technique through observation, seeing it unfold on the court was still a shocking experience. As Yasunhei grappled with the unexpected turn of events, Agiwara approached Haizaki with an unusually serious expression. This marked the first time Haizaki had seen such gravity in Agiwara's demeanor, catching him off guard. Unable to contain his curiosity, Haizaki couldn't help but ask, "What's with your expression?" "Haizaki." Agiwara spoke slowly, his tone making Haizaki feel uneasy as he listened. Agiwara sighed, his words carrying a weight, "Please don't use those moves again." "Are you picking a fight?" Haizaki couldn't help but twitch his mouth, momentarily left speechless. Agiwara's unexpected request had caught him off guard. It was annoying for Haizaki to find himself feeling nervous because of Agiwara, who was suddenly saying nonsense. Mochizuki burst into laughter at their exchanges. Nijimura shook his head amusedly, adding, "Agiwara's got a point, Haizaki. Your behavior is more like a thug, don't flaunt those elegant moves. It's nauseating." "Hey? Are you picking a fight, Nijimura?" Haizaki shouted, annoyed at the unexpected turn of events and the teasing from his teammates. In response, Nijimura's eyes turned cold, sending shivers down Haizaki's spine. Uncomfortable, Haizaki looked away and clicked his tongue in annoyance. "I'll let it slide this time, you motherfucker." Mochizuki continued laughing on the side as they all walked back to their positions. Agiwara maintained his serious expression, insisting, "Promise me you won't pull those moves again. I might throw a real punch if you keep saying that." Haizaki scratched his head irritably. Tsuna observed their exchange as a small smile played on his lips. Considering they could still joke around like that, Tsuna could see that their training had also increased their mental resilience. Despite taking control of the momentum, Yasunhei was not an average team. They couldn't be taken lightly by any team in the Winter Cup. As he looked at their faces, enjoying the banter and light-hearted bullying of Haizaki, Tsuna thought, "They handle pressure well now, hey? Not bad." Chapter 178, Chapter 176, Unshackled Force. "I'm using honorifics just for Murasakibara's flashback." "Hey, Muchin, you're overdoing it." A child's grumbling voice echoed across the small playground. The words were directed at a tall kid with purple hair who stood out among the others. The purple-haired kid had been effortlessly dominating their game, taking away the fun for the other kids. "Hey? Why should I? It's not fun otherwise." The purple-haired kid grumbled in an adorable manner, a hint of annoyance on their face. The response from the purple-haired kid didn't sit well with the others. One of them expressed their frustration, saying, "Come on, Muchin. It's no fun if you keep blocking us like that." The purple-haired kid grumbled once more, "Such a hassle." Even though they continued playing, the purple-haired kid still dominated, leading to more complaints. An exasperated mutter escaped from him, "I wasn't even trying that hard." So irritating. Despite the complaints, the purple-haired kid continued playing, but this time, he took a more laid-back approach to avoid further objections from the others. Whoa! The stadium reverberated with a collective gasp, a wave of excitement pulsating through the air. Such an intense game! This would probably be the most exciting game for the day. The uproarious cheer of the crowd washed over the court, an audible manifestation of the fervor coursing through every spectator. Murasakibara, momentarily lost in the thrill of the moment, was drawn back to reality by the crescendo of excitement. As the game unfolded, Fukuda Sogo began deciphering the mechanics of Himuro's shot, and Mochizuki geared up to counter it. Meanwhile, Murasakibara found himself thwarted repeatedly by Najimura's unwavering defense over the basket despite relentlessly using his Thor's hammer. "This is annoying," Murasakibara grumbled, clenching the ball tighter. His gaze remained fixed on Najimura's figure, frustration evident in the audible click of his tongue. Unbeknownst to Murasakibara, hidden beneath the facade of annoyance, his eyes gleamed with an intensity that contradicted his words. Najimura's eyes flashed with a steely determination, his entire body tensing in anticipation for the impending move. Murasakibara, displaying a nonchalant attitude, effortlessly leaped into the air, his tall frame rotating gracefully toward the basket. With a casual remark, he spoke, "You're so annoying, senior." As he reached the zenith of his jump, Murasakibara unleashed a powerful slam, propelling the ball downward with both hands. Undeterred by the formidable force of Murasakibara's move, Nijimura demonstrated persistence. His eyes glinted with focus as he calculated the perfect timing. He intercepted the ball with a powerful jump, his hand forcefully striking it precisely. In disbelief, Nijimura widened his eyes as he felt the unexpected power behind Murasakibara's slam. Nonetheless, he skillfully diverted the trajectory, using his hand to alter the ball's course. The impact made the ball hit the rim with a resonating sound before bouncing back toward the court. In a swift move, Fukuda Sogo seized control of the ball, defying the challenges posed by Okamura and Lu from Yasenhai, who aimed to snag the rebound. With remarkable precision, they swiftly passed the ball to Tsuna. As if propelled by a burst of energy, Tsuna exploded down the court with a streak of speed and a resounding slam as he drove the ball through the basket. Murasakibara's annoyance manifested in the audible click of his tongue as he retreated to his designated spot on the court. A furrow formed on his brow as his gaze involuntarily shifted towards Tsuna's silhouette. Throughout his life, people that he came across had always been saying to him to tone it down. Initially, this constant admonishment had irked him, but with the passage of time, he had grown accustomed to it, accepting it as a natural part of his existence. Tsuna, however, stood as a singular exception. He was the first person to say the opposite. A cascade of conflicting emotions surged within him as he clutched his rapidly beating heart. Confusion enveloped his thoughts, a disorienting fog settling over him as he grappled with Tsuna's words echoing in his mind. "Confusing," Murasakibara muttered. His lips unconsciously curled up for a fleeting moment, a subtle shift from his usual annoyed expression, before returning to its accustomed state. The force behind that slam kept getting stronger and stronger. Nijimura frowned, directing his gaze toward his trembling hand that had braved the onslaught head-on. As Nijimura pivoted his attention towards Murasakibara, his eyes widened in surprise. The towering figure before him appeared to sport a brief smirk. This subtle expression vanished like a passing breeze as if it were nothing more than an ephemeral illusion. Whether it was a figment of his imagination or a fleeting reality, a shiver ran down Najimura's spine. "Shit, I might not be able to last for long if this keeps going," he muttered silently. As possession shifted to Yasenhai, the game's dynamic underwent a rapid transformation. Dribbling the ball, Fukui wore a pensive frown, contemplating, "I guess, I'd pass it to Himuro again, hey." Despite comprehending the intricate mechanics behind Himuro's shot, it was useless. Himuro's adaptability rendered any tactical understanding almost meaningless. Himuro tossed the ball into the air with a deceptive fluidity, mimicking a shot. The illusion was so convincing that if a defender took the bait and leaped prematurely, Himuro would seamlessly regain possession before executing the actual shot. And for those cautious enough not to jump prematurely, Himuro possessed the lethal ability to convert the feigned shot into a genuine one. However, he felt a strong gaze on him, giving him pressure. As his eyes sought the source of this intense pressure, they fell upon Murasakibara. The annoyed countenance that had adorned Murasakibara's face moments ago now gave way to a serious expression. "Murasakibara," Fukui muttered, a tinge of disbelief coloring his tone. A collective awareness rippled through the onlookers, the shift in Murasakibara's demeanor registering with everyone present. Fukui sensed an intense desire emanating from Murasakibara for the ball, an unspoken demand that resonated with a palpable energy. Grinning in response, Fukui declared, "Sure." Aware that they needed to seize control of the escalating situation, Fukui acted with swift precision. With a calculated pass, he redirected the ball toward Murasakibara. As he took in a deep breath, Murasakibara's gaze flickered to Nijimura positioned on his back. Nijimura felt the hairs on his body stand on end, goosebumps prickling across his skin. He couldn't help but think, he's coming. Murasakibara wasted no time, propelling himself into the air with a seamless rotation, executing his signature Thor's hammer towards the basket. A familiar move, yet this time, an undeniable surge of power coursed through the court, prompting widened eyes and disbelief from all witnesses. Nijimura bided his time, calculating the precise moment. With a powerful leap, he intercepted the ball in Murasakibara's grasp. Upon the impact, Nijimura gritted his teeth, feeling an unprecedented force. This time, however, it was immovable. Murasakibara shattered through, a thunderous slam echoing through the arena, accompanied by the triumphant proclamation, "Thor's hammer." The collision left Nijimura swaying, collapsing onto the ground. He gazed up at Murasakibara from his prone position, towering over him. A shadow of silver seemed to overlay Murasakibara's figure. He truly was holding back his strength the whole time. Nijimura mumbled in disbelief. Chapter 179, Chapter 177, Reality Check. A collective disbelief swept through the spectators as they all fixated on Murasakibara's towering figure, unconsciously swallowing in response to the awe-inspiring display. Finally. This is Yasunhai's determination. Agree, it was still possible to turn the table around. The crowd itself became a part of the spectacle, erupting in excitement. The prospect of Yasunhai breaking through Nijimura's unyielding defense injected a surge of energy into the atmosphere. Meanwhile, Nijimura, rising from the ground, shook his head with a knowing expression. He had anticipated this turn of events, having received insights from Tsuna prior to the game. The revelation was shocking, but it was still bearable. Nijimura, meeting Tsuna's cold gaze, acknowledged with a nod. Caught in the intensity of the moment, Murasakibara, his heart racing, looked on in confusion as Nijimura suddenly sprang into action. Meanwhile, "Shit, did he get a sudden level up or what?" Mochizuki's stunned mumble echoed, conveying the astonishment shared by the rest. Heads shook in disbelief as the other Fukuda Sogo players collectively tried to regain their composure, grappling with the unexpected turn of events. On the other side of the court, Yasunhai's expressions, initially marked by shock, now radiated newfound brightness. Murasakibara's successful breakthrough had allowed them to wrest control of the situation. Coupled with Himuro's mirage shot from the perimeter, the team now possessed the means to score both from within and outside. Finally, Fukui's excitement manifested in a tight grip on his fist. Himuro wore a light smile, his gaze shifting to Murasakibara's towering figure. The breakthrough had injected a positive shift into Yasunhai's prospects. Okamura, observing the unfolding dynamics, offered a light chuckle. With this, we should be able to take over the momentum slowly. He glanced at the scoreboard, where the numbers read 53-39. Despite the ongoing deficit and the fact that the second quarter was about to end, a sense of optimism permeated the atmosphere. "Woa!" Murasakibara broke past Nijimura's block. Kagane's exclamation echoed through the gymnasium, carrying the infectious energy of the moment. Siren's players, sharing a collective nod, smiled in acknowledgement. Seems like Yasunhai is determined to win. Kagami and Kuroko joined in with smiles of their own. However, Ayamine's brow furrowed as he directed his gaze toward Tsuna. Amid the excitement reverberating through the gym, he shook his head, expressing a sentiment that countered the prevailing enthusiasm. As if it would be easy to turn the table around against someone like him. Ha! A scoff cut through the air, drawing the attention of everyone present. It was Tsuna, dribbling the ball at a deliberate pace. "It seems like you were daydreaming." His words, delivered with a cold edge, sliced through the ambient excitement. A shadow streaked down the court, catching Yasunhai's players off guard. Those who hadn't returned to their positions turned with surprise to see Nijimura now positioned in their free throw area, a sudden leap propelling him toward the basket without even holding the ball in his hand. The sight left the Yasunhai players wide-eyed in disbelief, the unexpected turn of events unfolding before them. Unable to contain his skepticism, Fukui muttered, "That's impossible, right?" He wasn't even near the center line. Indeed, Tsuna stood not far from Fukuda Sogo's basket. However, almost as if to taunt their disbelief, with a powerful flick of his hand, the ball shot up like a meteor, arcing toward Nijimura's waiting hand on the other side of the court. In a resounding slam, Nijimura stroked the ball into the basket. It sent shockwaves through the entire gymnasium. The once electric atmosphere, filled with cheers and excitement, succumbed to a sudden and eerie silence. The swift and seemingly impossible play had frozen the exhilarating moment from just a while ago into a state of hushed astonishment. Asterisk whistle. The referee's whistle came into the picture, filling the silence which brought back everyone from the reverie as the second quarter had come to an end. Everyone could only turn their head slowly toward the scoreboard as if making sure what just happened was not a dream, and they could see that Fukuda Sogo's score had indeed been changed to 55-39. And before long, the crowd erupted with disbelief. "What the hell was that?" exclaimed a bewildered spectator. "Fukuda Sogo's captain is insane!" shouted another, his voice a mix of shock and awe. "I thought the momentum had totally turned, it seems like we were all mistaken." A third person remarked, their earlier assumptions shattered. The atmosphere buzzed with animated conversations as spectators exchanged thoughts and opinions on the remarkable display they had just witnessed. Although the gym buzzed with excitement, certain spots still clung to a lingering quietness. Shotoku, Kaijo, Rakuzan, and even Siren were caught in this subdued atmosphere. Siren's players, just like everyone else, couldn't help but share a sense of speechless awe. Words seemed to stick in their throats as they absorbed the incredible move Tsuna had just pulled off. "He can pull that off from that far away?" Kagami's question cut through the silence, echoing the collective effort to make sense of the astonishing feat. Kuroko furrowed his brow in thought. The rest of the Siren team mirrored his contemplative silence, uncertain about how to react to this extraordinary display of skill. Seated beside them, Momwa shook her head as she chimed in, "Kuroko's Ignite Pass Kai can effortlessly traverse the court, so why couldn't Tsuna's do the same? Now that you mention it, it does make sense." Aida agreed, though a hint of disbelief lingered in her expression. However, Amin just clicked his tongue in response. From the start, there was no table to be turned. The notion of a table was merely a construct of their imagination. Tsuna, indifferent to the existence of such a metaphorical table, shattered their illusions with his play. What he executed had obliterated their imaginary table, grounding them in the reality of Fukuda Sogo's prowess. No, it was Tsuna's might that had left them in awe and forced them to acknowledge the strength that stood before them. The once brightened faces of Yasenhai players dimmed once again, replaced by somber expressions. They remained on the court while Fukuda Sogo's players gracefully exited, making their way towards the designated changing room as there was a 15-minute break before the second half commenced. "Seems like we'll need to push even harder," Okamura muttered, his gaze shifting to Tsuna's back. Fukuda Sogo's captain moved with an air of regality, accompanied by his teammates like a king flanked by his royal knights. Even Araki, seasoned as a coach, wore a serious expression. In her entire coaching career, she had never witnessed such a ludicrous play. Well, things started getting ridiculous with the appearance of the Generation of Miracles anyway. "It seems showcasing such extraordinary feats has become a trend," she sighed, casting a glance at her players who were making their way towards the bench to gather their belongings before heading to the changing room. Chapter 180, Chapter 178, Confronting the Unleashed Beast Head-On. "To see the momentum they craved flip around so abruptly," Atsubo remarked, glancing at Yasenhai players while packing their belongings. "His passing range is practically akin to Shin's shooting range, right?" Takao added, shaking his head in disbelief. His gaze shifted to Midorima beside him, and a thought lingered in his mind: ordinary people like us can never hope to catch up with monsters like them, hey. Well, that was unfortunate. Mibuchi released a sigh, a tangible expression of disappointment. Recognized for their strength, Yasenhai had been a formidable opponent. Rakuzan-hai had previously crossed paths with them during the Inter-High. Despite the expectation that adding Murasakibara and Himuro to their roster would elevate their prowess, it proved otherwise, especially in the face of Fukuda Sogo. Mibuchi couldn't help but shake his head gently, musing, "I suppose they should be doing that well, considering there are rivals." Mibuchi was confident if they were in Fukuda Sogo's shoes, they would do the same against Yasenhai with Akashi on their side. Kaijo had commenced their warm-up routine on the court in anticipation of their upcoming game. Meanwhile, within Fukuda Sogo's changing room, A collective sense of disbelief hung in the air as everyone's attention centered on Tsuna. Alexandra simply shook her head while Nijimura was looking at his hands that were still trembling from the recent confrontation with Murasakibara. "Why are you all looking at me like that?" Tsuna sighed, a hint of weariness in his voice as he posed the question, attempting to unravel the mystery behind the scrutinizing gazes. "Have you been holding back your pass to us in close range, Captain?" Mochizuki's frustration spilled into his words as he tightly gripped his fist. A collective sense of surprise hit them as each member absorbed the impact of their captain's recent display. The shock wasn't limited to external observers, the team members themselves found themselves equally taken aback. Yet, amidst the astonishment, a thread of frustration wound its way through their thoughts. Watching Tsuna execute the seemingly effortless pass from such a distance, it dawned on them that he had been deliberately holding back his strength for them. The realization added a layer of depth to their emotions, transforming initial surprise into a shared sense of vexation. Mochizuki believed that with his current strength, he had finally earned the right to receive one of Tsuna's passes. However, it turned out that Tsuna was being considerate, adjusting the strength of the pass. Even with this consideration, Mochizuki found himself struggling to maintain control of the ball due to the pass's unexpected force. Agiwara and Hizaki shared a state of mild distress. Observing their reactions, Tsuna couldn't help but shake his head in amusement. "Does it really matter?" "No." "Then, why the sulking faces?" "We're just frustrated." Turning to Alexandra, Tsuna addressed her directly, "Alex, it seems like they've started spouting nonsense. Increase their training." "What? Why?" Alexandra chuckled, her response laced with understanding. "Sure thing, Captain. You said you want me to stop holding back, then get stronger. Isn't it simple?" Tsuna's straightforward words left them momentarily speechless, their eyes now gleaming with newfound determination. Agiwara locked eyes with Tsuna, his gaze burning with resolve as he silently pledged, "We promise you, we'll face your full force in this tournament." "I swear to it." Tsuna sighed once more, turning his attention toward Nijimura. "Good job on suppressing Atsushi during the first half, Shozo. Your job ends here." Nijimura raised his gaze, offering a wry smile in response to Tsuna's words. The toll of facing such a formidable opponent was evident, yet he had undeniably fulfilled his role admirably. "We need to switch things up in the second half. In the next quarter, we'll finish them off with this." Tsuna's eyes gleamed with a hint of cunning light as he began outlining their plans. Meanwhile, a similar atmosphere lingered in the Yasenhai camp. Players sat in silence, facing their coach. However, amidst the tension, one individual seemed unaffected, busily piling up mountains of snacks and devouring them on the side. "Well, there's no need to dwell too much on what happened earlier. What's done is done. There's nothing we can do about it," Araki calmly addressed the team. Having successfully captured everyone's attention, she nodded in acknowledgement before proceeding. "Considering Murasakibara has opened up our way from the inside, we must fully capitalize on it in the next half." A unanimous nod rippled through the team, determination reflected in their gleaming eyes. "Still, I doubt they would just let us be. So, be prepared for what's coming. Things shouldn't deviate much from their records." Araki continued as her instructions intermingling with the rhythmic sounds of munching. Her eyes then sparked with a fierce light as she concluded, "And in the next quarter, we have to be more aggressive. That's the only way to catch up and win the game." Shortly after the break ended, both teams returned to the court, reigniting the excitement among the spectators. The watchful eyes of other teams focused on their every move. "You're up, and I know you'll handle it easily." Mochizuki spoke, offering his encouragement to Ishida. Ishida chuckled in response, "Don't worry, I'm not going to do it alone anyway." Tsuna had made the decision to substitute Mochizuki, signaling a shift to an even faster pace. With Mochizuki tapping into his beastly instinct, Tsuna's agenda for the day was nearly complete, with just one task remaining: to finish the game with absolute domination. And Mochizuki didn't even complain about Tsuna's decision. Tsuna's leadership style was never forceful, yet everyone in Fukuda Sogo followed his words like a compass. Even the stubborn Hizaki, though hesitant to admit it, would comply with Tsuna's instructions. Yasenhai also observed this sudden change, and Okamura's frown deepened. A sense of foreboding lingered, but he dismissed it with a slight shake of his head, urging his team, "All right, focus up. Whatever they're planning, it'll unfold on the court. Let's go." As both teams readied themselves, the game commenced swiftly. The players from Yasenhai braced for the unknown as Tsuna casually dribbled the ball. To their astonishment, Fukui, initially assigned to mark Tsuna, found himself closely shadowed by Nijimura, preventing him from fulfilling his defensive duty. Did he switch places with Nijimura? So, does that mean he's personally taking on Murasakibara from now on? Araki's expression tightened at this unexpected twist. She closely observed Murasakibara, displaying clear annoyance as he made his way to confront Tsuna. Chapter 181, Chapter 179, Unveiling his finisher. Without waiting for Murasakibara to close in, Tsuna initiated a seamless exchange of glances with his teammates. A silent understanding passed among them, and with synchronized movements, they sprang into action. Tsuna's nimble hand flicked the ball, transforming it into a blurred streak that landed perfectly in Ishida's waiting hand. Ishida clenched his jaw in frustration, the strain evident on his face as he secured the pass. The weight of Mochizuki's words sunk in, and he couldn't help but marvel, and he's still holding back his strength? Fucking monster! As the ball changed possession, Tsuna, fueled by a burst of speed, skillfully maneuvered around Murasakibara, leaving the towering opponent in his wake. Murasakibara found himself struggling to react in time, trailing behind Tsuna's sudden maneuver. Tasked with marking Ishida, Liu felt a palpable threat emanating from the determined player. However, Ishida had no intention of breaking through Liu's defense. With a seemingly careless motion, he released the ball from his grip, a move that caught Liu off guard, causing words to choke in his throat. Liu! Intercept the pass! Okamura's urgent command jolted Liu back to reality just in the nick of time to witness Tsuna's abrupt appearance, seamlessly catching the ball. Liu couldn't help but mutter curses under his breath, vexed by his own momentary lapse. Damn it, I let my guard down again. As Murasakibara continued his pursuit of Tsuna, the latter sent the ball soaring in a straight line toward the basket with another deft flick of his hand. Nijimura had already leaped into the air, his hand poised for a slamming dunk. The ball, guided by Tsuna's powerful flick of his hand, aimed precisely toward Nijimura's trajectory, resulting in a perfect zenith strike, which sent a shockwave throughout the gymnasium. What the hell with that pace? Takao couldn't help but muttered. Fukuda Sogo players moving all at once at such a pace would undoubtedly put pressure on Yasenhai players. Midorima adjusted his glasses as he thought, still if Tsuna had to move around like that, it would be a bit of a hassle. However, Midorima was sure that Tsuna was aware of it as well. So he was watching on closely to see the full force of such a fast-paced play style from Fukuda Sogo. Meanwhile, on the court, a wave of frustration swept over the Yasenhai players, their teeth audibly gritting before they managed to regain their composure. All right, shake it off. Stay focused. It's time to make a comeback. Okamura's assertive voice echoed as he skillfully directed the ball towards Fukui. As Yasenhai pressed forward, Okamura's eyes widened in surprise, taking in the unfolding scene before him. Tsunachin! Murasakibara grumbled, his eyes flashing with a rare seriousness as he closely observed Tsuna marking him. If Nijimura stood as the embodiment of an imposing mountain, in stark contrast, Tsuna exuded the energy of a dynamic volcano, poised to erupt at any given moment. Well, it appears Nijimura's might wasn't sufficient to halt your advance, Atsushi. So, here I am, Tsuna declared with a confident smile, his eyes radiating a fierce determination. He continued, feel free to unleash everything this time, Atsushi. Murasakibara's eyes widened, sensing an even greater pressure surging through his towering frame. The atmosphere around him intensified, reacting to Tsuna's bold invitation. Yet, Tsuna stood resolute, unwavering in the face of Murasakibara's imposing presence. Nijimura smiled slightly at this as he thought, of course, you're feeling the pressure. Tsuna's stronger than me, after all. Despite Nijimura's marginal height advantage over Tsuna, the two were evenly matched in body weight. This wasn't a consequence of excess fat, rather, it spoke to Tsuna's physique, where muscle mass compensated for any apparent weight difference. He knew Tsuna had openly acknowledged Murasakibara's raw strength superiority. But recalling Tsuna's ability to overpower silver, Nijimura was certain Tsuna possessed the capability to do the same against Murasakibara. Okamura wasn't particularly surprised to see Tsuna marking Murasakibara, he had anticipated this move. What caught him off guard was the sudden shift in Fukuda Sogo's formation. Haizaki had taken up the task of marking Fukui, who was skillfully dribbling the ball forward. But the surprises didn't end there. Himuro now found himself tightly marked by two players Ogiwara and Ishida while Nijimura had taken up a defensive position, marking a zone that covered both his spot and Liu's. Okamura couldn't help but muse, is he trying to mimic Murasakibara or something? He then locked gazes with Fukui as they shared a meaningful glance. Fukui nonchalantly initiated his shooting motion without missing a beat, sending the ball soaring through the air. Haizaki clicked his tongue in annoyance, seeing such recklessness. I thought I was reckless, but maybe there's truth to the saying there's always someone better. His mind raced as he observed the ball striking the rim, creating a suspenseful moment. Reacting with synchronized precision, Okamura and Liu moved in perfect harmony, aiming to secure the rebound. However, a sudden chill ran down their spines, causing goosebumps to cover their entire bodies. In the blink of an eye, Nijimura closed the distance with astonishing speed, reminiscent of the formidable Murasakibara but with a more compact frame. With an almost supernatural agility, Nijimura leaped into the air, snatching the ball away from Okamura's reach. He could close such distance in an instant. He exclaimed in disbelief. The swift action by Nijimura spurred Fukuda Sogo's players into immediate motion, their confidence evident as if they harbored zero doubt in Nijimura's success. This left the Yasenhai players dumbfounded, watching in disbelief as Nijimura effortlessly passed the ball toward Tsuna. In a seamless continuation, Tsuna flicked his hand and redirected the ball forward, weaving it through the court with precision. The ball found its way into Haizaki's waiting hand, and in a powerful leap, he soared upward and slammed the ball down into the basket. Unfortunately for Yasenhai, it was far from over as they smoothly passed the ball to Himuro. Ogiwara and Ishida assumed a seemingly casual stance, belying the intense pressure they exerted. Despite their relaxed appearance, Himuro felt a surge of surprise, thinking, beast instinct. And two of them at that. Teams who were spectating the match in the stands shared the sentiment. It became apparent that nearly all of Fukuda Sogo's players had tapped into their beastly instincts. Observing from Shudoka's side, Midorima was frowning. He had a weird feeling that Ogiwara and Ishida could outmatch Himuro, no matter how elusive his mirage shot was. Adjusting his glasses, he sighed and muttered, "Is this a checkmate?" Chapter 182, Chapter 180, Unstoppable Force. Let him shoot later. Tsuna's voice reverberated, leaving Ishida and Ogiwara perplexed. Ishida was confused, why not just prevent him from shooting altogether? With Ogiwara by his side, Ishida felt confident in thwarting any attempts to score, as they were attuned to identifying and exploiting any weaknesses displayed by their opponents, whether conscious or not. You can do that later, but allow him one shot. Tsuna instructed. Though the rationale behind Tsuna's strategy eluded them, both Ogiwara and Ishida nodded, ready to execute the plan as directed, trusting in Tsuna's strategic insight. I don't understand our captain's plan, but unfortunately for you. Ishida silently recalled Tsuna's instructions, taking a deep breath. His gaze sharpened, yet his body remained relaxed as he purposefully maintained a measured distance from Himuro. Ishida declared, any shoot will be meaningless with our combined force. Ogiwara mirrored Ishida's intensity, his eyes honing in on Himuro as they both shadowed his every move. Under the mounting pressure, Himuro began to break into a sweat. Despite this, his gaze remained resolute as he declared, I don't care about your schemes or who stands in my way. Whether it's one opponent or two, I'll overcome it all. Nothing can stop this shoot. Himuro transitioned seamlessly into his shooting form, the movement so graceful that it drew an annoyed click of Ishida's tongue. Despite the gentleness and refinement in Himuro's motion, Ishida, ever sharp, immediately leaped to block the shot. In a clever feint, Himuro, seeing Ishida's swift reaction, held off on his jump momentarily. He tossed the ball into the air with just enough height to give the illusion that he was leaping and shooting in one fluid motion. The elegance of his movement deceived onlookers, making it appear as if he had executed a typical jump shot. Unbeknownst to Himuro, Ogiwara's eyes gleamed with anticipation. He, too, immediately made his move. Feeling the moment had arrived, Himuro's eyes flashed with confidence. He leaped into the air, securing the ball once more before launching his shot. His voice rang out, declaring, as I told you, it's impossible to stop my mirage shot. But, just as the words left his lips, Ogiwara's figure suddenly soared into action, mirroring Ishida's movement from the side. Himuro's eyes widened in disbelief as the ball he had just released was abruptly blocked by Ogiwara, who had swiftly come in as a backup. As if anticipating this turn of events, Ishida had already stepped back, and with a swift sidestep, he retrieved the blocked ball. Himuro gritted his teeth as frustration etched on his face. He felt like he was being played around, and with determination fueling his movements, he sprang into action and chased after Ishida. However, his efforts proved futile, a realization that struck him too late. In a synchronized display of confidence, every player from Fukuda Sogo moved with a precision that spoke volumes about their trust in Ishida and Agiwara to thwart Himuro's mirage shot. Even Tsuna, who was being shadowed by the towering presence of Murasakibara, followed along as soon as Agiwara made his move. Ishida couldn't help but smirk as he smoothly passed the ball toward Tsuna, leaving Himuro to watch helplessly as the ball slipped beyond his reach. With the ball securely in his hand, Tsuna accelerated even faster, skillfully dribbling as he weaved through the court. Annoyance etched on Murasakibara's face, he couldn't help but shout, "Tsunachan!" With his towering stature and agility, the court seemed to be a small place for Murasakibara as he swiftly closed the distance, assuming a formidable defensive stance ready for any of Tsuna's moves. Undeterred, Tsuna pressed on, his movements seemingly accelerating. In a moment that left the crowd breathless, Tsuna soared into the air, defying gravity with a bold and daring leap. The gymnasium echoed with gasps of shock and disbelief as spectators watched, their eyes widening with amazement. The seconds stretched into eternity as Tsuna's ascent seemed to freeze time, the crowd collectively holding their breath. Murasakibara found himself genuinely surprised by Tsuna's audacity to attempt a dunk right in front of him. His disbelief was evident as he couldn't contain his reaction. "That's rare stupidity from you, Tsunachan," he remarked, his determination evident as he leaped upward to block the incoming dunk. However, when his hand made contact with the ball, Murasakibara's eyes widened in disbelief. He gritted his teeth and tightened his muscles to block the forceful dunk. Not a chance. Unfortunately for Murasakibara, Tsuna's slamming hand, even when it faced his resistance, still managed to break through. Bang! The sound of the dunk echoed thunderously through the court, making an impact as the ball broke into the basket. The force of their clash was great. And with Tsuna's successful dunk, Murasakibara's form couldn't help but sent down the ground stumbling on his butt. He looked up at Tsuna's face in disbelief. Holy crap! What in the world just happened? Kazama overpowering Murasakibara. Then, as if a spell had been shattered, the gymnasium burst into a symphony of cheers, the sound bouncing off the walls. The initial sounds were tentative, almost as if the crowd needed a moment to grasp the audacious feat they had just witnessed. However, as the reality settled in, the cheers grew into an unstoppable crescendo, echoing throughout the gym. Tsuna stepped toward Murasakibara's bewildered form, extending his hand in a gesture of assistance. He spoke with a calm assurance, "Are you all right? Grab my hand, I'll help you up." "Oh? Yeah, thanks, I guess." Murasakibara's response was somewhat muddled, his usual composure momentarily disrupted. Tsuna shook his head with a small smile on his face, "See? I told you not to hold back at all, Atsushi." Murasakibara's eyes widened in response to Tsuna's words, his attention fixed on the sincerity edged across Tsuna's expression. There was no hint of mockery in Tsuna's tone and eyes. This reminded Murasakibara of the days they played basketball together in Tsuna's residence during their Gyoko days. Images of Tsuna's past selves overlapped seamlessly with his current one, causing words to catch in Murasakibara's throat. "Well, I suppose I should give you some time to process, hey?" Observing Murasakibara's speechless state, Tsuna sighed and casually strolled back to his position, leaving Murasakibara alone. "Atsushi, are you all right?" Himuro approached Murasakibara, his voice carrying genuine concern. Okamura, Lu, and Fukui quickly gathered around Murasakibara, inspecting him to ensure he wasn't injured. Much to their relief, Murasakibara appeared unharmed. Despite feeling slightly annoyed by their collective fussing, Murasakibara refrained from voicing his irritation. Their genuine concern for his well-being softened his usual reticence. His gaze shifted toward Tsuna's figure, calmly walking away, prompting him to mutter, "Tsunachan really hasn't changed at all, hey?" Chapter 183, Chapter 181, Understanding His Emotions. How was that even possible? The perplexing question reverberated among the teams gathered to witness the game. At Shotoku, Midorima calmly adjusted his glasses, his analytical mind at work. That force didn't solely come from Tsuna's raw strength. If not from that, then where did it come from? Takao's bewilderment mirrored the sentiments of many, grappling with the idea of Tsuna overpowering the towering Murasakibara. Did you notice how Tsuna intentionally accelerated his speed just before launching himself for the basket? Midorima inquired, his gaze sweeping across the faces of his attentive teammates from Shotoku. Everyone in Shotoku nodded at Midorima's question. Atsubo then widened his eyes in realization as he spoke, did he use that to power up his dunk? Midorima responded, exactly. Tsuna didn't rely solely on his raw strength. By accelerating before takeoff, Tsuna increased his velocity, which, when combined with his already impressive raw strength, resulted in a more powerful dunk. Tsuna grasped the likelihood of Murasakibara blocking his dunk if it lacked enough power. Conversely, Murasakibara, confident in his strength to thwart most opponents, expected to nullify Tsuna's attempt, only to be caught off guard by the sheer force behind it. He essentially converted his kinetic energy into an explosive vertical force, Midorima analyzed. Back on the court, Murasakibara abruptly strolled off the playing area, approaching his coach with a nonchalant air. He extended his hand, Masako-chin, do you have any hair tie? Call me coach, you brat. Araki scolded, her irritation evident. She retrieved her hair tie, quizzically asking, why do you need it? Accepting the hair tie from his coach, Murasakibara promptly secured his unruly hair. My hair is getting in the way. Araki frowned, shaking her head at his carefree response. Unperturbed, Murasakibara returned to his position. As the game unfolded, Yasunhei gradually came to the realization that there were no more openings for them to exploit. Nijimura, in his own defensive zone and unimpeded by Murasakibara's formidable presence, asserted dominance over Okamura and Liu. His individual prowess proved overwhelming for the Yasunhei players. Fukui gritted his teeth. With little choice left, he made the decision to pass the ball to Himuro, placing hope in the potential breakthrough of Himuro's mirage shot, even though it had failed once before. Yet, as soon as the ball found its way into Himuro's hands, Ishida and Agiwara weren't about to let him execute his play unchallenged. Closing in with calculated precision, they exerted even stronger pressure on Himuro, denying him the space and time to execute his moves as they fiercely defended against Yasunhei's attempts. I can't make the shot. Himuro's eyes widened. An instinctual alarm rang in him, signaling that any attempt to shoot would face fierce opposition from Ishida and Agiwara, cold-blooded in their determination to steal the ball. He pondered, struck by the sudden understanding. They let me take that shot before just to toy with me, didn't they? The revelation hit him hard. It was a deliberate ploy, offering a false opportunity only to block it, leaving Himuro feeling deceived. A current of frustration and anger surged through Himuro as he initiated his shooting motion, his face edged with unwavering determination. Yet, Agiwara, like a predator sensing its prey, acted with predatory precision. His eyes flashed as he moved, grazing the ball before Himuro could fully transition into his shooting form. Seeing Himuro make an obvious mistake, Ishida couldn't help but think, foolish move, is this why Captain told us to let him the shot earlier? He seized the opportunity crafted by his teammate and took possession of the ball as he swiftly passed the ball toward Tsuna. A complex emotion played across Midorima's face as he observed Tsuna's figure on the court. In the end, Yasunhei was still at his mercy, weren't they? With Tsuna now asserting dominance over Murasakibara, Fukuda Sogo's formation mercilessly sealed any openings Yasunhei might exploit. Meanwhile, witnessing Tsuna gain possession of the ball, Murasakibara snapped into full alertness. His towering figure extended his arms defensively, radiating an overwhelming pressure solely through his imposing physique. However, Tsuna remained unfazed by the formidable pressure. Anticipating Tsuna's unyielding response, Murasakibara found himself submerged in memories. Echoes of a young Tsuna scolding him replayed in his mind. Open your arms, don't be lazy. Tsuna's youthful voice admonished a younger Murasakibara, who stood before him, defending against attempts to score. Despite his annoyance, Murasakibara obediently followed the instructions, spreading his arms wide. Yet, Tsuna's dissatisfaction persisted as he scolded once again, you spread it too high. I can just slide through easily, lower it down a little. So bothersome, Murasakibara grumbled, relenting and adjusting his arms to a perfect defensive form. Tsuna nodded in satisfaction, a smirk playing on his lips. Great, that's perfect. Tsuna's excitement gleamed in his eyes before his gaze sharpened. Now, let me destroy it. Without wasting any more time, Tsuna closed in, surprising Murasakibara, who widened his eyes in response. Swiftly slipping to the right, Tsuna deftly rotated his body in the same direction, skillfully breaking past Murasakibara's defense. With agility and finesse, Tsuna burst forward, leaping toward the basket. Murasakibara, no pushover in his own right, kept pace with Tsuna. As Tsuna could see Murasakibara leaping up to block his attempt, a smirk formed on Tsuna's face. In a display of mid-air acrobatics, Tsuna tucked in his body, executing a rotation that slipped through Murasakibara's block. With precision, he slammed the ball down toward the basket. The thunderous sounds of the dunk snapped Murasakibara back to reality. He glanced at Tsuna's figure, now firmly on the ground. Your defensive form is better than the last time I've seen it. Good job, Atsushi. Tsuna's voice, filled with praise, left Murasakibara surprised. Despite Murasakibara's superior defensive form, Tsuna effortlessly dismantled it, reminiscent of their interactions in the past. Murasakibara shook his head as a sense of déjà vu lingered. Well, that was fun. As Tsuna prepared to return to his position, Murasakibara's expression soured upon hearing these words. Noticing the change, Tsuna halted and inquired, "Why? What's wrong? You almost sounded like Kuroko-chan." "It's annoying," Murasakibara clicked his tongue. However, Tsuna dismissed the comparison, shaking his head as he spoke, "I'm not asking you to have fun, I said I was having fun playing against you, Atsushi." Now that you mention it, it does sound different," Murasakibara mumbled, contemplating the nuances of Tsuna's words. Tsuna chuckled, lightening the mood, "Were you mad at Tetsuya?" "Not really, though he's a bit bothersome sometimes. And one of his teammates was the most annoying to me," Murasakibara complained, adopting a somewhat childish tone. Yet, as he delved into his grievances, a question surfaced in his mind, prompting him to ask, "How are you having fun, Tsuna-chan?" "What do you mean?" "I mean, how did you know you're having fun?" "You, Ayamine-chan, and Kais-chan said the same stuff over and over again. It's annoying." "Oh, that." Tsuna smiled as he then spoke, "Well, I suppose you know that training is annoying and tiring, right?" Murasakibara nodded. "But isn't it different when you're playing on the court? Although it's pretty tiring, don't you find it not as annoying as when you're training?" Tsuna's smile got even wider. Pointing at his chest where his heart resided, Tsuna added, "When you play an exciting game, your heart will beat faster as you get into the flow. It's not just about the physical exertion, it's about the adrenaline, the anticipation and the joy that comes from pushing yourself to the limits." Hearing the same symptom that had perplexed him throughout the game, Murasakibara listened attentively as his heart beat even faster. "Do you know what it's called when your heart beats so fast during a game?" Tsuna asked, to which Murasakibara shook his head. "That is excitement." "Excitement?" Murasakibara couldn't help but clutch his beating heart, now throbbing with stronger confusion. However, Tsuna's words didn't end there as he continued, "When you experience excitement, it means the game has captured your heart and soul. And do you know what that means? That means you're having fun." Murasakibara widened his eyes in disbelief at Tsuna's words, standing there frozen, trying to comprehend the revelation he had just learned from Tsuna. Chapter 184, Chapter 182, title at the end of the chapter. As Tsuna continued his walk back to his position, Murasakibara found himself lost in contemplation. However, as Tsuna moved away, his expression shifted into his iconic smirk, a gesture that sent shivers down Fukuda Sogo's players' spines. They were all too aware that when Tsuna wore that expression, he was plotting something. Even Midorima, observing from a distance, felt a chill running down his spine. He nervously adjusted his glasses, thinking, he's up to something again. Meanwhile, Murasakibara clutched his chest tightly, a gesture reflecting the turmoil within him. In the midst of his confusion, he muttered, "Is this excitement? Am I getting excited?" Slowly, the fog of confusion dissipated as he gazed at Tsuna's retreating figure. Tsuna's words echoed in his mind as he took a deep breath and pondered once again, "Am I having fun?" As the game progressed, Fukuda Sogo asserted complete dominance over the third quarter, leaving Yasenhai unable to mount a comeback. Frustrated by their inability to break through, Araki frowned, contemplating the need for a timeout to regroup. Now on the offensive, Fukuda Sogo pressed forward after thwarting Yasenhai's attempt. Dribbling the ball, Tsuna faced the formidable defense of Murasakibara. This scene triggered memories of their past encounters. In a moment of déjà vu, Tsuna skillfully broke past Murasakibara's defense and scored more points for Fukuda Sogo despite Murasakibara attempting to stop him. As Yasenhai launched their counterattack, Murasakibara seized the ball, attempting to slam it down the basket. However, Tsuna's tenacious defense thwarted his efforts. Yet, with each passing moment, the pace of the game seemed to quicken, and Murasakibara's heart raced faster. As the point gap between Yasenhai and Fukuda Sogo continued to widen, frustration slowly permeated the air among the Yasenhai players. They struggled against Fukuda Sogo's overwhelming prowess, their efforts appearing futile. However, Murasakibara stood apart from the collective frustration that hung over his teammates like a heavy cloud. Amidst the disheartened atmosphere, Murasakibara found solace in his own battle against Tsuna. The score may have been slipping away, but Murasakibara remained unfazed by the mounting pressure. Unlike his teammates, he carried no burden of such frustrations. With every move Tsuna made to suppress him, Murasakibara's mind only grew clearer. The rapid beats of his heart became a rhythm, syncing with the pace of the game. As the opposing team tightened their grip on victory, Murasakibara's excitement grew. Useless thoughts dissolved into the background noise, and he descended further into the depths of concentration. The world outside the court ceased to exist, all that mattered was the clash between him and Tsuna. The more Murasakibara felt suppressed, the more alive he became. The whole court went quiet as everyone, whether from Yasenhai, Murasakibara's own teammates, or even Fukuda Sogo, stared at him in shock. People from other teams who came to watch the game, especially those who knew Murasakibara personally, couldn't believe their eyes. With a confident smile on his face, Tsuna seemed to be having a good time challenging and suppressing Murasakibara. However, what really caught everyone off guard, though, was Murasakibara's response. Murasakibara's smiling. Kuroko expressed his disbelief looking at the scene where Murasakibara was smiling like a kid while playing against Tsuna. "Why are you surprised with that?" Hyuga asked, feeling confused as he didn't know Murasakibara in person. However, Kyoji had an idea what kind of person Murasakibara was as he shook his head. "You should if you know that guy seemed to hate basketball." "What?" Teammates exchanged surprised looks, struggling to reconcile this newfound expression with the typically serious Murasakibara. "I never thought he'd smile like that." Amin muttered silently. He was looking at Murasakibara as he shook his head. Still reeling from the shock, Fukui continued dribbling the ball forward, stealing glances at Murasakibara. Murasakibara openly gazed at him with his eyes earnestly pleading for the ball in a manner entirely unfamiliar to Fukui. What on earth happened to make him like this? Fukui couldn't shake off the bewilderment, seeing Murasakibara behaving like a completely different person. Despite the confusion, Fukui found himself passing the ball to Murasakibara. "Perfect," came Murasakibara's mumbled response, prompting a raised eyebrow from Tsuna. Tsuna took a deep breath, preparing to block Murasakibara's attempt. Even for someone like him, stopping Murasakibara was no walk in the park. "I'll break through this time, Tsunachan!" Murasakibara exclaimed with a confident smile spreading across his face. With a powerful leap, he soared into the air, executing a fluid rotation of his body. With both hands, he slammed the ball toward the basket, announcing his signature move, Thor's Hammer. Tsuna responded with a small but determined smile. His gaze sharpened as he jumped forward, aiming to intercept Murasakibara's iconic move. However, as their hands made contact, Tsuna's eyes widened in surprise. The intense force behind Murasakibara's Thor's Hammer was on a whole new level, catching him off guard. The tension in the air heightened as Tsuna faced Murasakibara's impending move. Knowing that a direct block might not be possible, Tsuna opted to divert the ball as Nijimura did before. However, Murasakibara's hand remained an immovable force, defying Tsuna's attempt to redirect the ball. Undeterred, Tsuna frowned as he braced himself for the inevitable impact as Murasakibara effortlessly broke past his block. The court shook with the thunderous force of Murasakibara's dunk, sending shockwaves of excitement through the crowd. "Whoa!" The cheers reverberated as spectators rose in exhilaration. Despite the clash propelling him backward, Tsuna landed skillfully, maintaining his balance. As he glanced at Murasakibara's towering figure, his frown turned into a smirk of excitement. He could break past Tsuna's block. Nijimura widened his eyes in disbelief at this unexpected turn of events. He knew Murasakibara was a beast in terms of raw strength, however, Tsuna was a monster in his own right. In that fleeting moment when Tsuna realized he couldn't halt the Thor's Hammer, Nijimura observed a subtle movement, an indication of Tsuna's attempt to divert the impending force. Yet, despite all efforts, Tsuna failed to stop it. Nijimura simply couldn't believe what he had just witnessed. As the echoes of the clash resonated through the court, he muttered, "Is it really possible?" "That's it, Atsushi!" Tsuna exclaimed excitedly. His eyes suddenly lighting up with a dark-colored spark that streamed across his pupils like a visible surge of intensity. Murasakibara didn't seem to be affected, his expression transforming into a state of stillness and calmness. His purple pupils sparked with vivid purple-colored flashes that streaked across his gaze, revealing an internal shift in his focus and determination. The moment they both touched down, a palpable force enveloped the entire court. It was a collision of two players who had entered an extraordinary level of play. The zone. The spectators in the stands sensed the heightened tension as the cheers from the crowd grew even louder. Title: Behemoth's Awakening. Chapter 185, Chapter 183, In Their Own World. He entered the zone. Himuro's disbelief was etched across his face as he witnessed the unfolding events. The shock wasn't limited to him, the entire Yasenhai team stood frozen in amazement. He had heard that entering the zone was a privilege bestowed upon a select few, individuals who met strict criteria to unlock the door leading to the full awakening of their 100% potential. Unfortunately, he wasn't one of them. Kagami, a person Himuro considered a rival and a brother, could tap into the zone. Despite the burning desire to confront Kagami and settle their unresolved issues, deep down, Himuro acknowledged that he would never catch up. Complicated emotions swirled within Himuro as he observed the unfolding spectacle. Determination flickered in his eyes, yet unease lingered beneath the surface. He momentarily diverted his attention to the scoreboard, where the overwhelming score of 87-41 in Fukuda Sogo's favor loomed large. Can we even catch up? Doubt clouded his thoughts, casting shadows over any glimmer of optimism. If it were only Murasakibara entering the zone, perhaps there was a slim chance, however faint. But the situation took a dire turn when Fukuda Sogo's captain seamlessly transitioned into the zone immediately after Murasakibara's awakening as if it was just a walk in the park. The battlefield had elevated to a level where ordinary players like Himuro felt a stark realization they were mere spectators in a clash of extraordinary forces, unable to intervene in the titanic struggle unfolding before them. I knew it. So, this was his plan all along, hey. A chuckle escaped Midorima's lips, the tingling sensation beneath his skin betraying the excitement coursing through him as he observed the intense clash unfolding. With a small, satisfied smile, Midorima adjusted his glasses, muttering, "This was truly unexpected. To think I'd be able to witness Murasakibara entering the zone." In Siren's seat, Kuroko struggled with disbelief as unspoken words lingered in his throat. The sight of Murasakibara, seemingly reveling in the game, was shocking enough, but the revelation that it was just the beginning left him speechless. Do all the generation of miracles possess this ability to enter the zone at will? It's simply just absurd. Hyaga's frown deepened, beads of sweat forming on his forehead. In the face of this revelation, Siren could only share a solemn sigh, their silence echoing the weight of the situation they found themselves in. Are you surprised, Daiki? Momoa's question hung in the air, directed at Ayamine. Ayamine nodded in response before sharing his thoughts. Yeah, I was surprised. I can't figure out what got into Murasakibara, but with Tsuna around, he might have influenced him somehow. True, Momoa agreed, wearing a gentle smile as she stole a glance at Tsuna, who was visibly thrilled by the game. Observing Tsuna's excitement, it reminded her of Ayamine during their Diako days. Ayamine was always beaming with joy when facing off against him. Yet. Yes. This is it. I hit the jackpot. I swear on my name, I would bring you to the States, Atsushi. Tsuna proclaimed with silent enthusiasm, his excitement stemming from a different source than what others perceived. Contrary to external expectations, his exhilaration sprang from uncovering yet another jackpot, perhaps the most significant one since his reincarnation. Murasakibara might be slow to pick up things and generally laid back, but it sticks with him once he gets the hang of something. Tsuna noticed this when watching Nijimura face off against Murasakibara and now experiencing it himself. Murasakibara could display the things Tsuna had taught him while he was in Tiako flawlessly. Tsuna smirked in disbelief. No, that's not right. He's taken it a step further. He exclaimed, his eyes gleaming with excitement. With Tsuna and Murasakibara immersed in the zone, the court seemed frozen in time. The other players appeared like mere spectators, their movements sluggish compared to the dynamic intensity of the two powerhouses engaged in an exhilarating showdown. Tsuna effortlessly weaved through Murasakibara's defense. He kept scoring like it was a piece of cake, even with Murasakibara in the zone. It was like a back-and-forth dance, and the crowd loved every second of it. Murasakibara retaliated with the same intensity. However, he wasn't having an easy time. He noticed the same old struggles coming back, and he was falling behind. However, he had this big grin on his face. He was actually enjoying the challenge. On the flip side, Tsuna was smiling too, but for a different reason. "You're really enjoying this, Atsushi," Tsuna remarked, triumphantly breaking through Murasakibara's defense and notching another score. The words hit Murasakibara like a pang of dissatisfaction. It echoed what Kuroko used to say, and he grumbled, "You promised you wouldn't turn into another Kuroko-chan." "I'm not." "Just look at that grin on your face," Tsuna retorted, a matching smile on his lips. Murasakibara's expression crumpled like a piece of paper as he childishly clamped his hands over his ears with an annoyed face. "I'm not listening," he declared, his face revealing a mixture of irritation and defiance. Tsuna was amused by this. His eyes, however, sparkled with an idea. "Tomorrow, I'm getting a batch of St. Eric crisps. Do you want some?" At the mention of the epitome of expensive chips, Murasakibara straightened his posture abruptly as if summoned by a commanding officer, uncovering his ears with a suddenness that seemed almost comical. "I'm all ears," he responded casually, as though the previous discontent had never taken place. With a wry smile, Tsuna shook his head. It seemed that swaying Murasakibara's mood was as simple as offering a bag of high-end snacks. This guy is so easy to bribe. As the game resumed, a collective gasp filled the air as onlookers observed the unfolding scene with wide-eyed surprise. What transpired on the court defied expectations of a fiercely competitive tournament match. Instead, it resembled a lively exchange between two players reveling in the joy of the game. With every defense broken, neither side showed any sign of frustration. The atmosphere remained intensely charged, yet both maintained unyielding smiles. Akin, wearing a complicated expression, shook his head, muttering in disbelief, "Seriously, hey?" A wave of nostalgia engulfed him as he watched Tsuna and Murasakibara engage in a game that seemed to carve out a space exclusively for them, a showdown in their own world. Beside him, Momoa shook her head, a mixture of amusement and fondness coloring her expression. Adjusting his glasses, Midorima couldn't help but scoff, "Ha, what a spectacle!" Despite this, a subtle smile tugged at his lips. Initially taken aback, the crowd gradually immersed themselves in the moment's unexpected delight. Smiles spread through the spectators like a contagion, and even the players on the court couldn't help but shake their heads in amusement at the unfolding showdown. Chapter 186, Chapter 184, The Sealed Outcome. In the Rakuzan high seating area, the uncrowned kings observed the unfolding spectacle with a collective shake of their heads. Despite their initial disbelief, smiles gradually found their way to their faces, unable to resist the infectious joy emanating from the court. Mibuchi, contemplating the scene, mused, "They're practically having a game of their own now." Intrigued, he couldn't resist stealing a glance at Akashi, curious about his reaction. To his surprise, Mibuchi's eyes widened as he caught sight of Akashi's expression. "What's with this coldness?" Mibuchi thought, taken aback by the icy demeanor on Akashi's face as he observed his former teammates reveling in the game. The contrast between the warmth on the court and Akashi's detached gaze created a poignant moment that lingered in the air which made Mibuchi couldn't help but feel uncomfortable. Before Mibuchi could articulate his unease, Akashi abruptly rose from his seat, a move that caught everyone off guard. "Let's go." "The outcome has already been decided," Akashi declared, his voice cutting through the ambient sounds. His decisive words left the others in an awkward state of surprise. "It doesn't matter. You can stay if you want to watch." Akashi's response was as cold and unwavering as his steps. His words cut through the air, leaving no room for argument. The detachment in his voice only accentuated the decisiveness of his departure. Kotaro found himself scratching his head, torn between the desire to witness more of the game and the unyielding pull of following Akashi. In the end, he chose to follow along as the others were already making their way out. Meanwhile, on the court, the third quarter wrapped up with Fukuda Sogo leading 107-59, showing a clear advantage. On the adjacent court, where Kaijo High fiercely contested against their opponents, Kai's couldn't help but bring a hand to his head as he looked at the other court, exclaiming, "Now, that was a surprise." "Why is that a surprise?" Kasumatsu abruptly severed Kai's words, a swift jab to Kai's stomach leaving him clutching it with a pained expression. "Why?" Kai's shot Kasumatsu a look of both bewilderment and silent inquiry, silently asking why he had to endure such a sudden assault. Coldly watching Kai's writhe in discomfort, Kasumatsu maintained a stern gaze that left Kai's momentarily speechless. "Son of a bitch," Kai's mumbled under his breath. "What did you say?" "No, nothing." An intense silence enveloped them as Kasumatsu continued to scrutinize Kai's with a serious expression. The atmosphere grew tense, forcing Kai's to nervously avert his gaze and whistling. Sighing, Kasumatsu spoke, "Whatever, just focus on our own game. You don't need to worry about that." Kai's responded with a smile, his outward demeanor seemingly relaxed. Yet, behind that smile, his eyes blazed with an uncontainable excitement. The ongoing clash between Fukuda Sogo and Yasunhei had ignited the flames of his competitive spirit. Over at Yasunhei's bench, Okamura was giving Murasakibara a friendly pat on the back. Murasakibara didn't seem too thrilled about it, and his face twisted into a scowl. Despite Murasakibara's reaction, Okamura just chuckled and continued patting him while jokingly saying, "Ha ha ha, I've never seen you smile like this. What happened?" Murasakibara was clearly annoyed as he replied, "Not telling you." Okamura burst into even louder laughter in response. Fukui and Lu stood on the sidelines, shaking their heads in disbelief. On the other hand, Himura wore a gentle smile. Feeling surprised, Araki looked at their expressions before glancing at the scoreboard. She thought, "I guess they've realized catching up is nearly impossible, hey." Admitting it was a tough pill to swallow, Fukuda Sogo's skills, especially their captain's, were just too overwhelming. Shaking her head with a tinge of embarrassment, Araki turned her attention back to the banter and teasing directed at Murasakibara. He seemed to have undergone a change, and she thought, besides, it's not bad to see this big boy having fun. Amused by the situation, Araki couldn't help but crack a smile. On Fukuda Sogo's bench, a collective sigh swept through everyone, prompting Tsuna to shake his head. Agiwara mumbled, "It's always like this when we face a tough opponent." He couldn't help but feel disappointed that they couldn't fully relish the match, especially with their captain entering the zone alongside Murasakibara. Haizaki remained silent, but his expression spoke volumes, silently concurring with Agiwara's sentiment. Mochizuki chuckled and said, "Well, there's nothing we can do at this point." "We're being carried again," Ishida said with a sigh. Nijimura found their banter amusing. While it was unfortunate, he secretly felt a bit relieved as marking two players simultaneously was exhausting. Though he was confident that he could endure until the end of the match, Nijimura knew his muscles would ache from the effort. Suppressing Murasakibara had drained most of his stamina after all. "Tsuna, are you planning to stick in the zone to finish this match?" Alexandra inquired, displaying her concern for Tsuna's well-being. Staying in the zone, she knew, could strain both the body and the mind. While she had confidence in Tsuna's mental strength, recognizing him as the most persistent and determined person she had ever known, the toll on his still developing body was inevitable, no matter how formidable he was. "I probably will," Tsuna replied after a quick glance at Murasakibara on the opposite side. He could discern from Murasakibara's expression that the guy was still up for actively challenging him. "You can maintain that state until the end?" Ishida inquired after hearing Tsuna's earlier words. Tsuna nodded and admitted, "Yeah, though I might have to push myself a little." "Incredible, average guys like us can never keep up with that." A collective sigh filled the air. They couldn't help but acknowledge the world's unfairness. Tsuna shook his head, thinking, the real monster is right there, sitting among the Yasunhei players. Murasakibara had been playing intensely from the beginning, with Nijimura going all out against him. Despite the effort, he still had enough stamina to keep going. Tsuna suspected that even if Murasakibara depleted his stamina, he would likely persist in that state. This is the first time he's being honest with himself and actually enjoying the game. Hearing this, Alexandra sighed and cautioned, "Don't overexert yourself." No need to worry. Even though Alexandra cared about Tsuna and worried about him, Tsuna was someone who liked to test his own limits all the time. He believed that facing difficult challenges and enduring hardships would make him improve and become even stronger. Besides, Tsuna was fully immersed in the match, relishing every moment of it. Contemplating Murasakibara's potential to surpass the silver level, excitement surged through Tsuna, and his face lit up with his signature smirk. Observing this, Nijimura found himself a bit at a loss for words, thinking, why did he suddenly put on that expression again? Chapter 187, Chapter 185, Absolute Domination. Shortly after, the referee signaled for both teams to return as the final quarter was about to begin. However, it wasn't about the climax of the game anymore, as Yasenhai had already acknowledged the inevitable outcome. Despite the frustration, they understood it was part of the natural selection in a prestigious tournament like the Winter Cup. What mattered to them now was letting Murasakibara have his fun. It was a spectacle to witness the usually childlike Murasakibara genuinely enjoying his time on the basketball court. The clash between the two players kept going, and the crowd continued to cheer throughout their showdown. It felt like this was shaping up to be the highlight of the whole tournament, and you could see that in the way the audience was completely into it. In the blink of an eye, the game wrapped up with Murasakibara sprawled on the ground, looking totally wiped out. But, despite the exhaustion, there was this content smile on his tired face. It was like he'd given everything he had, and there was a sense of fulfillment in that smile. The spectators couldn't contain their admiration for both Tsuna and Murasakibara. At first, the applause was hesitant, a few scattered claps that gradually filled the gymnasium. It was more than just acknowledgement, it was a unified expression of gratitude for the incredible show they had just witnessed. As the applause reverberated through the gymnasium, smiles bloomed on the faces of the audience, reflecting their appreciation for the gripping match. As the gymnasium buzzed with applause, Tsuna, standing tall in the midst of the cheering crowd, shot a glance at Murasakibara lying on the ground. Shaking his head, his face showed a mix of satisfaction and weariness. To the observer, Tsuna seemed unfazed, but beneath the surface, his muscles were feeling the strain. It was true that Tsuna had pushed himself a bit too hard, and his still-growing body had definitely hit its limit for the day. If he could, Tsuna just wanted to find a comfy spot, lie down, and doze off in his current state. However, he knew if he gave in to that temptation, he'd wake up feeling sore all over again. Still, even though his body felt worn out, Tsuna's mind stayed sharp. Apart from the physical exhaustion, it was just his stubborn pride that made him refuse to show any sign of weakness, especially in front of those watching. So, amidst the cheers and the lingering thrill of the game, Tsuna stood firm. I did mention I was going to push myself a bit, but this might be a tad more than I bargained for. Tsuna chuckled wryly. Despite Tsuna's composed demeanor, just a slight movement carried an intensity that could make the average person flinch or even scream, given his current condition. However, in the face of Murasakibara's content smile, his expression softened. Casting a glance at the scoreboard displaying a commanding 137-74, Tsuna refocused on his own predicament, muttering, "Now, how to get my way out of this?" As Tsuna tightened his expression, preparing to force himself to make his next move, an unexpected weight landed on his shoulder. His nonchalant expression turned into a frown. Turning towards the intruder, Tsuna questioned, "What do you think you're doing, Shozo?" Nijimura responded with an unabashed grin. Before Tsuna could react, another arm belonging to Agiwara joined in. It wasn't just them, the entire Fukuda Sogo team, including the likes of Haizaki, encircled him. This collective act left Tsuna dissatisfied. They should have known better, aware that Tsuna wasn't fond of such things. Before he could voice his discontent, a sudden lift in his body caught him off guard, his eyes widening in surprise. "Let's celebrate, Captain!" Agiwara's voice resonated with a wide grin on his face. To an outsider, it might have seemed like a regular celebration, but Tsuna knew better. Nijimura and Agiwara had subtly helped him move around, easing the strain on his sore body without drawing attention. "Ha ha ha! We shattered the shield of Aegis. This calls for a celebration." Ishida's excitement echoed through the air as he raised his hands. "You're right." Mochizuki chimed in, creating a lively commotion, while Haizaki, although shaking his head a little, still followed suit. Despite the individual reactions, collective happiness permeated the group as they celebrated their significant victory in the second round. "Sure," Tsuna sighed, shaking his head slightly before reluctantly agreeing. However, a genuine smile began to form on his face as he grasped the sincerity behind their intention. Watching their jubilation, Tsuna couldn't help but chuckle as he remarked, "Cheeky bastards." On the sidelines, Alexandra observed with a gentle smile, silently wiping away a teardrop that had escaped her eye. As she witnessed what they were doing, a quiet thought crossed her mind, "You have great friends, Tsuna." "I'm glad." Soon after, both teams lined up, exchanging post-match pleasantries and expressing gratitude for the ceremonial gestures. However, as the players were about to leave the court, confusion spread among the Yasenhai team. Looking around, Fukui couldn't help but blurt out, where the hell did Murasakibara go? Wearing a wry smile, Himuro responded awkwardly, pointing toward the other side of the court where Fukuda Sogo was heading. He followed them. What did you say? Lu expressed disbelief, and Okamura burst into hearty laughter. On the other hand, Araki sighed, massaging her temple. She was feeling utterly speechless about Murasakibara's unexpected behavior. She then questioned, why did he have to go there again? Himuro fell silent, hesitating before answering. He said Tsunayoshi was about to share his snack with him. A moment of silence settled over the group as Okamura's laughter filled the ambience. Meanwhile, on the Fukuda Sogo's side. You like mint chocolate too? Agiwara asked, genuine surprise coloring his expression as he processed the revelation. After a long journey through life, Agiwara had finally found someone who shared his peculiar taste for mint chocolate. Overwhelmed with this unexpected connection, he couldn't help but tear up, touched by the simple joy of finding a kindred spirit. Witnessing Agiwara's emotional reaction, Haizaki couldn't hide his irritation. He twitched his mouth in annoyance, choosing to look away from what he deemed an unsightly display of sentimentality. But that didn't stop Agiwara. After composing himself, he shifted his expression into one of serious determination. He turned to their guest, a tall figure walking alongside their team, and declared, from today onwards, you're also my best friend. No, thanks. The reply was swift, delivered with a nonchalant tone that cut through the air. The tall figure's disinterest left Agiwara's hopeful expression crumpled, his aspirations for a new best friend mercilessly dashed. Ishida and Mochizuki seized the opportunity, erupting in laughter as they teasingly started to poke fun at Agiwara after his rejection. Haizaki stood there speechlessly, scratching his head. On the side, Nijimura observed the light-hearted banter with a small smile playing on his face. However, Tsuna was sighing at the unfolding scene as he turned his attention to the tall figure and inquired, why are you following us, Atsushi? You said you're about to get St. Eric cribs, no? Gimme some. Murasakibara's matter-of-fact response left Tsuna momentarily speechless. Another sigh escaped Tsuna's lips as he shook his head. Chapter 188, Chapter 186, A Reminder. Yasenhai lost, hui. Haiga muttered. The gymnasium fell into a momentary hush as the members of Siren absorbed the reality of the scoreboard. The numbers displayed spelled out absolute domination by Fukuda Sogo, a surprising turn of events given Yasenhai's formidable reputation, particularly as the Shield of Aegis. Despite their strong contender status for the Winter Cup, Yasenhai found themselves overpowered by Fukuda Sogo's might. I get it that Fukuda Sogo was a strong team, but that Kazama... Kagami muttered, his hand clenched into a tight fist. His eyes blazed with a mix of excitement and admiration as he continued, he's on a whole different level. He wasn't entirely sure if he could match up with Tsuna on equal ground, but oddly, Kagami didn't recoil from the prospect. Instead, a strange excitement began to course through his veins. The idea of facing someone of Tsuna's caliber stirred something within him, and rather than fear, Kagami found himself looking forward to the challenge. Let's go, Satsuki. Ayamine's sudden declaration jolted everyone's attention. Though wearing a confused expression, Momoa still rose to her feet and asked, right now? Kaijo's playing on the other side, though. Why don't we stay for longer? Ayamine frowned, his gaze shifting to Kaijo's ongoing match. He replied, there is no way for Kais to lose. The collective gaze of the group turned toward the court where Kaijo Hai was locked in their game. To their surprise, the scoreboard showed Kaijo taking a commanding lead of 26-8, an impressive margin even though it was only the first quarter. Ayamine shook his head with a smirk, continuing to walk. Besides, watching these two having fun made me want to grab a basketball. Wait for me, Daiki. Momoa turned to glance back at the Siren players who stayed behind, waving her arms in a playful farewell before turning her attention forward to chase after Ayamine. As both figures left, the Siren players redirected their focus to the ongoing Kaijo match. Izuki, breaking the silence, remarked, is it just me, or have all the generation of miracles improved since the Inter-High? Of course, they've improved, Aida nodded in agreement, glancing at everyone before adding, all of you were improving, why can't they? Well, she's right, everyone. Kiyoshi chimed in, a broad smile lighting up his face as he rose from his seat. Everyone's making strides, but only one will stand on top. So, let's keep moving forward. Kiyoshi's words struck a chord with the Siren players, igniting a flame of intense determination in their gazes. Siren's imminent second-round match spurred everyone into action. With determined expressions, they rose in unison, preparing to make their way to their designated changing room. Gone was the air of overconfidence that had briefly lingered among them, replaced now by a resolute determination. Two Academy loomed as their most formidable challenge yet. However, the recent match between Fukuda Sogo and Yasenhai served as a wake-up call for them. This was the Winter Cup. It was a gathering of Japan's finest, and Two Academy was just the initial hurdle. Let's stay focused and push forward. Hyaga's declaration rang out solemnly, injecting a sense of purpose into their steps as they made their way towards their changing room. Meanwhile, as he was dribbling the ball, Kasumatsu took a deep breath before casting a thoughtful gaze at their opponents. Their defense is solid. Their formation is pretty thoughtful. A sense of preparedness emanated from their adversaries. The opposing team seemed to have done their homework and was ready to face Kaijo High. I guess being called the best in Kagoshima wasn't just a bluff, Kasumatsu concluded, feeling the weight of the challenge presented by Yamanaka High. Hailing from Kagoshima, Yamanaka High had earned a reputation as the overlord of the small region. While they might not have dominated their area to the extent of powerhouses like Fukuda Sogo, Yasenhai, and Rakuzan High, they held the top spot in their local competition. However, Kasumatsu, displaying a subtle but effective feint, shifted his body slightly to the left. Caught off guard, the defender anticipated a leftward maneuver. In a flash, Kasumatsu's eyes sparkled with cunning as he swiftly changed direction, bursting towards the right and leaving the befuddled defender in his wake. As the Yamanaka players adapted and one of them moved to intercept him, Kasumatsu's eyes remained sharp. "I'll give you credit. You guys are tough." With a confident grin, he added, "But, unfortunately for you, we've got a monster on our side too. So, pack up and head home Yamanaka High." The defender assigned to thwart Kasumatsu looked on in surprise as the ball smoothly left Kasumatsu's control, finding its way to Kai's. Holding the ball with a nonchalant expression, Kai's contemplated his next move. He muttered to himself, "It should be left, right, then rotate, no." The defender marking Kai's gritted his teeth, interpreting Kai's demeanor as an underestimation. Fueled by determination, he exclaimed, "I'll stop you this time, you motherfucker." Swiftly, he moved his hand forward, aiming to steal the ball away from Kai's. During this confrontation, Kai's eyes gleamed with a sudden change in his footwork. In a surprising sidestep to the left, he left the defender momentarily caught off guard. Gritting his teeth, the defender reacted to Kai's unexpected movement. The sequence didn't end there. Demonstrating his agility, Kai sharply changed his direction to the right. However, as he executed the maneuver, he widened his eyes in surprise as he glanced at his feet. He was feeling the intense pressure on his muscles. Undeterred, he rotated his body in the same direction, creating a calculated distance. Harnessing newfound speed, he sprinted toward the basket with powerful stride. The anticipation in the crowd reached its peak as Kai leaped up, the sound of the dunk echoing through the arena. "Whoa! Let's go! Kaijo!" Cheers erupted, and the excitement cut through the court like a palpable energy. However, amid the celebration, a different sentiment lingered within Kai's. "Damn it! I needed to be faster," he cursed under his breath, a frown forming as he glanced down at his feet, still stinging from the intense move. To think it was that intense to try out his move, as expected. Kai's muttered, acknowledging the toll of the demanding play. Determined, he turned and returned to his position. "That little monster!" Kasumatsu couldn't help but mutter, his eyes widening in astonishment. Goosebumps prickled across his skin as he witnessed Kai's execute that move. Though imperfect and lacking the same speed and power, Kasumatsu couldn't deny the uncanny resemblance. His face transformed into a feral grin as he muttered in awe, "That was Fukuda Sogo's captain's movement." Chapter 189, Chapter 187, Alexandra's Addiction. On the other hand, Fukuda Sogo didn't stay for long in the gymnasium to watch the other matches for the day. They went straight to their accommodation together with the vehicle prepared by their captain. Upon arriving at the hotel, Sabas awaited them at the entrance. With a respectful bow, he greeted Tsuna, "Welcome back, young master. We've prepared the ice bath as per your request." "Thanks for your hard work yet again, Sabas." Tsuna acknowledged, a nod accentuating the weariness that permeated his body. Sabas responded with a polite nod of his own, "It's my responsibility, young master." you've prepared an ice bath for everyone. Alexandra expressed surprise, having been unaware of this arrangement. However, with a hint of disapproval, Nijimura interjected, I told you last night. You should have opened up your chat messaging app. Eh? Really? I didn't realize, haha, my bad. Alexandra replied with an awkward smile, a tinge of embarrassment coloring her expression. Tsuna simply shook his head, recognizing that Alexandra must have indulged in a night of revelry. He sighed as he couldn't entirely fault her. After all, he was the one who had introduced her to Gyude Sake, one of the finest in Japan. Well, since I don't really need to go along, I'll just get back to my room. Alexandra's awkwardness seamlessly transitioned into unbridled excitement, a swift change in her demeanor. I don't allow you to drink sake in the daytime. We might require some of your assistance later. The calm and authoritative voice cut through the air, instantly quelling Alexandra's excitement. With a deflated expression, Alexandra clung to Tsuna as if pleading, her tone reflecting a mix of disappointment and a lingering desire for the coveted sake. Eh? Why? Your Gyude sake was the best. Give me some, please. You've drunk it every day. Do you realize how expensive Gyude sake is? Our hotel expenses have inflated since you came here. Come on. You're rich, only 1 or 2 bottles shouldn't matter much for your operations, right? 1 or 2 bottles. Tsuna's voice gradually lowered, signaling a subtle shift in the atmosphere. Alexandra, realizing her misstep, swiftly composed herself like an adult, coughing a few times. Well, it's just the right time to take a nap, so I should go to my room right now. See you guys later. Silence lingered in the room as Alexandra made her hasty exit. They rolled their eyes at Alexandra's departing figure. Her antics were a familiar sight and it had grown mundane for the team, who often witnessed her beseeching their captain for an extra swig of sake. To think that under that beautiful appearance was nothing more than an alcoholic old man. Such a waste. Nijimura let out a weary sigh. Yet, amidst the eye rolls and exasperation, one member of the team seemed to revel in the spectacle. Excitement gleamed in Agiwara's eyes as he couldn't help but comment, as expected of an American. She's so carefree. Being American has nothing to do with such behavior. Nijimura lightly slapped Agiwara's head, subtly expressing amusement and frustration. Shaking his head, Nijimura turned to Sabaz on the side, acknowledging his presence with a polite bow. Stoic as ever, Sabaz nodded in response. Addressing Fukuda Sogo's players, he said, then, shall I guide you to the place? Sabaz offered as the hotel staff opened the door for them. Tsuna nodded and gestured for everyone to follow along. Even though Fukuda Sogo's players had experienced this multiple times already, they couldn't quite get used to it and still felt a bit uncomfortable. To their surprise, Murasakibara, who accompanied them, didn't seem the least bit fazed. The towering figure remained entirely uninterested, maintaining his usual disinterested expression. Murasakibara, are you used to this kind of thing as well? Are you also from a wealthy family or something? Agiwara couldn't help but ask, genuinely impressed with Murasakibara's mental resilience in such situations. Even though Murasakibara's family did have some business, they were by no means on the level of big conglomerates. At least, not yet. Not really. Why? Unbeknownst to them, it was just Murasakibara's unique character. Guided to the place where they'd be having an ice bath, they chatted with Murasakibara. Despite his brief and seemingly uninterested responses, Agiwara persisted with his questions. As they arrived in the room, a surprising sight welcomed the Fukuda Sogo Academy team, a series of bathtubs arranged thoughtfully to accommodate the entire team. A subtle haze hung in the air, emanating from the bathtubs filled with water. The low hum of circulating air contributed to the relaxed atmosphere. Each bathtub was well prepared, containing a mix of water and cubed ice. The partially melted ice cubes hinted at the refreshingly cool temperature of the water, promising a rejuvenating experience. Neatly folded towels on nearby counters, mellow background music, and a subtle scent of essential oils added to the overall spa-like feel. All right, take off your clothes and get in. Stay for at least 5 minutes to get the best result. Tsuna instructed, shedding his own clothes. He wrapped a towel around himself before sliding into the bathtub, exhaling a sigh of relief. Following Tsuna's lead, everyone began to undress and entered their respective bathtubs. Murasakibara, however, looked around in confusion before approaching Tsuna with a question, "Why am I here? Where is my snack? Motherfucker, so cold." Ishida exclaimed as he submerged himself into the icy water. Agiwara and Mochizuki, though silent, gritted their teeth and endured the chilling experience. Haizaki wore a frown as he slid into the bathtub, feeling the coldness envelope him. On the other hand, Nijimura simply shook his head, silently enduring the frigid water that permeated his entire being. The room echoed with a mix of exclamations, silent perseverance, and the occasional protest as each member of Fukuda Sogo Academy settled into the ice bath. "Just take off your clothes and get in first, it will help in your recovery," Tsuna advised, his body fully immersed in the ice bath. Despite the biting cold, a comforting sensation enveloped him, soothing his sore muscles. "Why? It's cold, I don't like it," Murasakibara grumbled, voicing his reluctance. With closed eyes, Tsuna calmly responded, "Just do as I said, you'll thank me later." Murasakibara clicked his tongue but eventually complied with Tsuna's instructions. The ice bath, though initially uncomfortable, served a vital purpose. It was a proven method for reducing muscle inflammation and expediting recovery. This addition to Fukuda Sogo's training regimen, facilitated by Tsuna, ensured that their recovery process was not only faster but more effective. Chapter 190, Chapter 188, Closing the Second Round I. While Fukuda Sogo, now with Murasakibara as their new addition, focused on recovering from their intense previous game, the Yoyogi Gymnasium retained its vibrant energy. "Whoa! Kaijo! 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 Let's go!" The crowd erupted in cheers as Kaijo High concluded their game with a resounding victory, the scoreboard displaying an impressive 110-46. Kasumatsu observed the lively scene, his gaze shifting to Kai's, who stood on the court, panting heavily after an intense performance. "Seems like the game on the other side earlier excites him," Kasumatsu thought, noting the signs of both exertion and satisfaction on Kai's face. Meanwhile, Kai's relished in the post-game moment, vividly recalling the intense movements he had attempted during the match. He couldn't help but glance at his trembling hands, feeling the soreness in his muscles, the tangible results of the demanding maneuvers. Kazamiki's movements were definitely different than Ayaminuka's, he mused, reflecting on the unique styles of these two formidable players. Kai's discovered that Tsuna's movements, though very agile and fast, carried an inherent power in each step. What added to the challenge was Tsuna's strategic consideration of his opponent's movements, a mental aspect that demanded extra focus. On the flip side, Ayamine's approach focused on speed and reaction, relying fully on instinct. Though both styles were distinct, they shared a common requirement: strong physical capability and focus. This realization made Kai's clench his fist in determination. However, a spark of excitement glinted in his eyes as he contemplated, "These are all feasible to copy." However, just as Kai's was at the peak of his excitement, a sudden jab to his stomach made him flinch in pain. Turning to the perpetrator, he questioned, "Why? You get too excited, Kai's. That makes you spend unnecessary stamina to win the game." Kasumatsu responded with his usual stoic expression, earning an eye roll from Kai's. Kasumatsu shook his head, adding, "You should save more of your stamina for our upcoming game." Kai's widened his eyes at the reminder before breaking into a smirk. "Don't worry about it," he assured his captain, continuing confidently, "All I can think about right now is our upcoming game." Kai's expression eased as he regained his composure, underscoring his serious determination for the upcoming match against Fukuda Sogo Academy. Kasumatsu nodded with a determined expression. Fukuda Sogo Academy stood as a formidable opponent, not only as the reigning inter-high champion but also demonstrated by their recent victory over Yasen High, hailed as the best defensive team with the top center in Japan. While he couldn't deny the challenges that lay ahead, Kasumatsu found solace and hope in the visible improvements Kai's had showcased throughout the first tournament. As they walked together, Kasumatsu's eyes gleamed with a renewed sense of optimism. "This year will be my last. I can't afford to lose hope. I certainly can't lose my confidence," he reflected, casting a glance at Kai's walking alongside the others. Taking the lead, he guided the team out of the gymnasium, silently declaring, "We have to win this tournament." Meanwhile, on the other court, the intensity of the crowd remained palpable as they cheered fervently. "Shin!" Takao's voice cut through the din as he expertly passed the ball to Midorima. As Midorima secured the ball, he spared a light glance toward the other court, his thoughts drifting, "Kaijo have won, hey. Then, the next round will be a sight to see," he thought with a slight smirk on his face. The defender facing Midorima on the opposite side displayed beads of sweat rolling down his face as he diligently tried to impede Midorima's shooting prowess. Despite his best efforts, he found himself drenched in perspiration, feeling the overwhelming pressure emanating from Midorima, who seamlessly transitioned into his shooting motion. "Are you kidding me?" the defender thought, a sense of disbelief washing over him as he witnessed Midorima's audacious move. As Midorima leapt, the unfortunate defender found his jumping height insufficient to reach Midorima's tall form. Despite his best efforts, he failed to block the ball, which shot up into the air with a high arc, devoid of any wasted motion. The sphere swiftly descended into the net with a swish, scoring yet another remarkable three-pointer for Midorima. Frustration edged across his face, and the defender could only gaze at the successful shot. What added to his vexation was Midorima's apparent nonchalance. The shooter didn't even spare a glance at his impeccable shot as he calmly retreated to his defensive position just a few steps away from where he started. "Freaking monster!" The defender couldn't contain his frustration, muttering under his breath as he begrudgingly acknowledged Midorima's exceptional skill and unnerving precision on the court. "Poor guy." Takao shook his head in pity, his eyes empathetic as he observed the defender tasked with marking Midorima. However, a glint of understanding shone in his eyes as he continued, "Well, can't disagree with him though. That guy is indeed a monster." Since their challenging game against Siren, Midorima had ramped up his training drills, driven by the belief that his shortcomings had contributed to the team's defeat. If anyone heard what Midorima thought, they might have been tempted to dispute his self-critical assessment, perhaps even resorting to a friendly beating for uttering such nonsense. Yet, Midorima remained resolute in his conviction. "Good shot, Shin!" Takao cheered. Midorima responded with a nonchalant air, adjusting his glasses with precision as he remarked, "It's natural. I brought my lucky item for the day with me. There is zero chance for me to miss my shot." Takao shot Midorima a light, complicated gaze, a mix of understanding and amusement evident in his eyes as he chuckled and quickly covered it up. Glancing at the scoreboard that displayed their overwhelming advantage over their current opponent, Takao's thoughts drifted, "We're in the same bracket as Rakuzan High." Upon uncovering details about Rakuzan High's roster, including former Generation of Miracles captain Akashi, Shuedoku realized that the other players were no slouches either. Concern clouded Takao's gaze as he considered, the uncrowned kings, and 3 of them are all in Rakuzan High. Even without Akashi, Takao couldn't deny that Rakuzan High presented a formidable challenge. And a team like that got defeated in the Inter-High? Does it mean everyone else on Fukuda Sogo is as good or even better than the uncrowned kings? Takao wondered, finding it a bit hard to believe. Shaking off those thoughts, he tried to focus on the game at hand. But the worry of being a burden lingered as he glanced at Midorima, who was the backbone of Shuedoku. He clenched his fist, determined to get better and not hold Midorima back. Who cares if they're the uncrowned kings? If Shin's shots are unstoppable, we win. Takao thought, recalling the prowess of Midorima's shots. He had been pondering ways to make those shots even more unstoppable, fully aware of his own limitations compared to the prodigious talents of the Generation of Miracles. Determined to be a better support for Midorima and recognizing the upcoming challenge of facing Rakuzan High, Takao wanted to contribute more to the team's success. "Shin, could we train together later?" Takao suddenly suggested, catching Midorima off guard. "Why all of a sudden? We trained together with everyone already." "No, just the 2 of us. I have an idea I'd like to try." Midorima furrowed his brow, studying Takao's determined expression before sighing, "Sure, as long as you don't waste my time. I won't disappoint you." Takao's expression brightened with eagerness as he made the promise. Chapter 191, Chapter 189, Closing the Second Round 2. The gymnasium erupted in an uproar as Shuedoku's match concluded with a resounding victory, the scoreboard reading 117-51. Crazy. This year's tournament is practically the Generation of Miracles solo stage. Can't disagree with you. Whoa. Kai's and Midorima seemed so excited today. Murmurs and chatters filled the gymnasium as the audience processed the one-sided spectacle they had just witnessed. However, the excitement was far from over as attention swiftly shifted to another side of the court. Whoa! Siren is on fire this game, too. Kagami's going crazy. They're another team that the Generation of Miracles needs to be wary of. Siren also dominated their match against Nakamiya South High. As the third quarter unfolded, they held a commanding lead with a massive score of 74-38, intensifying the buzz and anticipation in the gymnasium. Aida watched the ongoing game, a pleased grin on her face. They're doing really well. As the match unfolded today, she couldn't ignore the noticeable change in their attitude. Gone were the usual jokes and light banter. Instead, a serious determination had replaced their usual playful demeanor, as if a different spirit possessed them. Aida chuckled to herself. I guess they realized the Winter Cup has just started, she remarked, the grin still present. Aida couldn't help but thank Fukuda Sogo and Yasunhei for delivering such an intense game. That gripping match had revitalized the Siren players, leaving them in an even better mental state. On the court, Kagami took a deep breath before he maneuvered past two defenders who were both trying to stop him. With a burst of energy, he leaped up and dunked the ball, sparking excitement in the crowd. Nice one, Kagami! Hyuga praised as they regrouped, getting ready to defend against Nakamiya South's counterattack. As their opponents advanced, a player made a mistake in his pass, sending the ball too low, likely failing to anticipate Kuroko's ball-stealing moves. Shit! I passed the ball too low. Realizing his error, the player cursed under his breath while Nakamiya South's captain shouted for the team to defend. Everyone get back! Suddenly, Kuroko materialized right where the ball was headed, intercepting it and swiftly passing it to Kiyoshi, who caught it with a determined expression on his face. However, Nakamiya South's center quickly caught up, reaching Kiyoshi just as he leaped for a dunk. He arrived in the nick of time to block Kiyoshi's attempt. Thinking he had successfully stopped Kiyoshi, the center was taken by surprise as Kiyoshi changed his move. God damn it! Instead of going for the dunk, Kiyoshi passed the ball to Izuki, who swiftly passed it to Hyuga. Nice pass, Izuki! With intense focus in his eyes, Hyuga went into his shooting motion and released the ball, swishing it into the basket. Nice shot, Captain! As the game concluded, Siren secured a solid victory with a score of 107-63. Though not as impressive as the Generation of Miracles results, the important thing for them was that they won the second round and advanced to the third. After the post-match ceremonies, the crowd suddenly erupted in cheers and excitement on the other side of the court, where the final game of the second round of the Winter Cup was taking place. Rakuzan High is walking in. Whoa! Their entrance is always imposing as usual. That's Akashi from the Generation of Miracles. The mention of Akashi, a former captain of the renowned Generation of Miracles, further fueled the excitement. Whispers and exclamations spread like wildfire among the spectators, acknowledging the significance of his presence. Chatters broke out again, but this time, the entire gymnasium was abuzz with murmurs and conversations. Noticing the excitement, Kagana couldn't help but ask, should we stick around and watch this game? I'm not sure. What do you think, Captain? Izuki asked, making everyone turn their attention to Hyuga, who was also checking out the other court. Looking at Aida, Hyuga nodded, and Aida sighed as she nodded too. Watching this, Siren unknowingly got what Hyuga was getting at, and they all smiled. Let's stay for a while and see what's going on, Hyuga declared as he led Siren off the court before heading back to the seats and catching the game. As Siren found some empty seats, they settled in just in time for the game to start. Taking their seats, they observed the unfolding match. Kagami, in particular, wore a serious expression. He had crossed paths with Akashi before and considered him a formidable opponent. And a dangerous person. He thought as he vividly recalled Akashi's decisive attack with Midorima's scissors. Rakuzan seems to have quite the fan base, hey. Izuki remarked, scanning the crowd. Despite it being the final match and getting late, the gymnasium was still packed with people passionately watching and cheering for Rakuzan. It's no surprise. They held the championship for several years until Fukuda Sogo finally broke their streak a while back, Aida explained, her face showing a serious demeanor. Everyone in Siren was taken aback when Kagane blurted out, they win every time? How does that even happen? Aida shook her head and explained, unlike many schools, Rakuzan is a prestigious school that doesn't struggle with budget constraints. They can afford to scout numerous talented players each year, offering them attractive deals. And most of these players are among the best in their respective positions. She concluded, and Kiyoshi's expression turned serious as he looked over at familiar faces of the uncrowned kings on the court. As Siren watched the game unfold, Rakuzan seemed oddly normal in the first quarter. Despite their opponent struggling, scoring only 5 points so far, the game lacked the expected intensity. Kagane and the freshmen found it strange. Yet, their concerns were proven unnecessary. In the second quarter, while the pace remained steady, Rakuzan High somehow anticipated their opponent's moves. The opposing team couldn't counter Rakuzan's attacks. Just when they thought they'd seen enough, the third quarter arrived, and Rakuzan's pace accelerated even more. The score widened at an unbelievable rate. The shock wasn't limited to Siren. When the game concluded with the referee's whistle, the entire gymnasium fell silent. Onlookers stared in disbelief as Rakuzan High triumphed over their opponent with an astonishing score of 123-7. The Siren players could only watch with serious expressions on their faces. I always knew they were strong. But it's surprising that their opponent couldn't put up any resistance at all. What added to the unease was the fact that Akashi appeared to do very little, just smoothly passing the ball around and letting his team score. However, Kuroko, who understood Akashi better, knew it was all Akashi's doing. His opponents couldn't fight back because Akashi had read them like a book. Chapter 192, Chapter 190, Hizaki's Resolve. Meanwhile. Ah, this feels so good. Agiwara sighed in satisfaction as he settled into a massage chair. After the ice bath, they found themselves in a massage room, each chair providing a soothing retreat for tired bodies. The room had a serene ambience with soft lighting and calming music playing in the background. Don't make weird sounds like that. It's creepy. Hizaki grumbled, occupying a chair next to Agiwara. Why? It feels good, doesn't it? Just do what I said. Hizaki retorted, dismissing Agiwara's enjoyment with a nonchalant wave of his hand. Tsunachan, where's my Saint Eric cribs? Murasakibara's grumbling voice echoed, drawing everyone's attention to the towering figure in a massage chair, his eyes expressing mild irritation. His repetitive complaints had started to wear on everyone's nerves. Nijimura shook his head, observing the colossal pile of snacks beside Murasakibara, rapidly diminishing in an almost surreal manner. Those crisps will come tomorrow. We can't find them here in Japan, we have to import them from abroad. Eh? Why? Murasakibara questioned, displaying a genuine lack of understanding. Like I said, those fancy chips are produced in Sweden. We do have some in some of our 5-star restaurants, but they're quite scarce. So we'll have to wait until tomorrow when the next batch arrives. Oh. Murasakibara wore a puzzled expression, failing to fully grasp the situation. He grumbled again, but I want it now, though. Everyone present rolled their eyes at Murasakibara's persistence. However, Tsuna's unwavering patience in addressing Murasakibara's persistent inquiry surprised them and gradually earned a newfound respect for Tsuna's composure. The third round for the Winter Cup is in 2 days, huh? Who's our opponent again? Mochizuki recalled the upcoming schedule for the Winter Cup. I don't know. It's either Kaijo High or, what was their opponent again? I can't even recall their name. Ishida sighed, the massage chair coming to a halt. He rose from the chair, his eyes brightened as the soreness in his body seemed to dissipate. Mochizuki was left speechless, watching Ishida, who couldn't even remember Kaijo's opponent in the second round. However, his own eyes widened in realization, what was their name again? He, too, couldn't recollect Kaijo High's opponent. Nijimura seemed to see through their forgetfulness as he sighed, our opponent for the next round is undoubtedly Kaijo High. Everyone's eyes brightened at the news, realizing they would be facing another formidable team. However, Hizaki donned a frown, clenching his fist tightly as if agitation was brewing within him. In Hizaki's mind, a blonde figure with an annoying smile surfaced, causing him to grit his teeth in frustration. What's wrong, bud? Agiwara inquired, noticing Hizaki's unusual demeanor. Without a reply, Hizaki stood up abruptly and left the massage room. The others stared at Hizaki in confusion while Tsuna's eyes gleamed with a calculated light as he observed Hizaki's departure. Just where is he going? Agiwara muttered in confusion, glancing at the door. Hizaki had exited through. He contemplated whether to follow and inquire about Hizaki's troubles. Just leave him alone for now. Tsuna's voice cut through the room, causing Agiwara to tilt his head in confusion before deciding to remain seated. Observing Tsuna's composed expression, Agiwara nodded, convinced that Tsuna had everything under control. Yet, Tsuna's eyes remained fixed on the door, the one Hizaki had exited through earlier. In his thoughts, Tsuna pondered, will you be my final piece? A subtle smirk crept onto Tsuna's face at the notion of Hizaki being his last piece to complete the board. Don't disappoint me later, Shogo. The words escaped him in a silent mutter. Caught off guard by the unexpected smirk, Everyone in the room involuntarily flinched. A collective realization struck them, leaving them momentarily speechless, each sharing a common thought: our captain must be scheming something once again. After Haizaki exited the massage room, his mind and heart were still racing with agitation as he stepped into the hotel's indoor court. The dimly lit room cast in moonlight immediately caught his attention. The natural light filtering in from the outside painted the court in a somber glow, creating a moody atmosphere. Haizaki couldn't help but recall an unpleasant memory amid this subdued ambience. He cursed under his breath, "Motherfucker." The echo of his discontent lingered in the air, matching the muted surroundings of the indoor court. Haizaki's hand snatched a ball from the side, triggering a flood of memories that cast a shadow over his expression. He couldn't resist dribbling the ball, engaging in a solo game. As he maneuvered across the court, the memories of his time at Tiako High resurfaced with vivid intensity, each recalling a blow to his ego. His first year at Tiako had been a breeze, effortlessly securing a spot in the first string, thanks in no small part to Tsuna's presence. The power dynamics remained unchallenged throughout the year, maintaining an equilibrium. However, the tranquility shattered in his second year. Kai's emerged seemingly out of nowhere. Despite Haizaki's initial perception of Kai's as weak, he had never considered him a serious threat to his position. Yet, Kai's growth defied expectations, becoming exponential. Unwilling to admit it, Haizaki felt a rising threat. Subconsciously, he picked fights with Kai's in an attempt to assert dominance and clarify who was truly superior. Their clashes consistently ended with Haizaki on top. While Kai's showed improvement each time, Haizaki maintained the belief that victory was easily within his grasp. However, a nagging realization lingered: Kai's would eventually surpass him. Perhaps it was better to quit now. "Akashi, you bastard!" The curse exploded from Haizaki as he forcefully slammed the ball into the basket, sending shockwaves through the silent court. Those words, uttered coldly by Akashi right before they earned the title of the Generation of Miracles, echoed hauntingly in Haizaki's mind. Those cutting words struck at the core of Haizaki's pride. However, it wasn't just the verbal sting. The icy gaze from Akashi pierced his very soul, leaving him with a lingering fear that only intensified his wounded ego. Now that I think about it, his gaze is nothing compared to our captain's when he was displeased. Reflecting on it only fueled Haizaki's anger. It wasn't just anger towards Akashi, it was anger at himself for succumbing to fear. Everywhere he went, the name Generation of Miracles trailed him like a shadow, a constant reminder that irked him to no end. Deep down, he believed he deserved a place among them. If only he hadn't quit just because of Akashi's words, he could have been in the same spotlight. Haizaki felt his place had been unjustly taken. "I am Shogo Haizaki. I was supposed to be the one to steal and not to be stolen." Determined to prove Akashi wrong, he vowed to showcase his superiority. The first step in that direction was to suppress Kai's. His gaze brimmed with unwavering determination as he focused on the upcoming match. "I'll crush you later, Kai's," Haizaki declared, the intensity in his eyes revealing his resolve to demonstrate his prowess. Chapter 193, Chapter 191, Preparing for the upcoming round. The following day, teams advancing to the third round geared up, focusing on achieving the optimal mental state and physical condition. Most opted for lighter exercises, deviating from the intensity of their usual training drills, aiming to keep their muscles sharp without overexertion. However, amidst the sprawling training facility, the rhythmic thud of running shoes echoed. A group of teenagers, clad in black jerseys with red accents, circled the area in a heavy panting symphony. "I thought, hey, we're not training hard today." Mochizuki gasped between breaths. 2 additional laps for speaking nonsense. Tsuna's cold voice sliced through the air, causing Mochizuki's face to pale, resembling a sheet of paper as his soul seemingly fled his body. The air turned tense as the consequences of his words settled in. The others sported strained expressions, their faces contorting as they desperately suppressed the urge to mock and tease Mochizuki. They were all too aware that any expression of amusement would warrant them additional laps as well. 2 more laps for blatantly holding back your laughs, Shigehiro. Tsuna's stern command came after he caught Agiwara's lips twitching in an attempt to stifle laughter. Agiwara, now twitching his lips even more fervently, responded with a resounding, "Yes, sir." Why did I feel like he was enjoying more laps? Ishida muttered under his breath. Well acquainted with Agiwara's personality, Haizaki remained silent, knowing that Agiwara was indeed relishing the situation. Nijimura sighed in resignation, keeping pace with their captain as they navigated the additional laps together. Though the third round was just around the corner, Fukuda Sogo was still consistently following their gruesome training regime. When the team questioned their captain, Tsuna, about the rationale behind such rigorous training. Training to the point of risking it all is about transcending your limits. If you're aiming for more, don't just exist. Thrive. Tsuna delivered his words with a calm demeanor, and his response left them utterly astounded. However, the following sentence from Tsuna left them utterly speechless: if you don't want to, then just be a damn worm. The weight of his words hung in the air, and they found themselves resigned to their fate. Yet, the prospect of the upcoming ice bath and full body massage, courtesy of Tsuna, sparked a renewed determination in their eyes. The realization that such privileges awaited them heightened their desire to push through their limits, knowing that recovery would be swift with these amenities at their disposal. On the flip side of Tokyo, two players deeply immersed themselves in their training, their jerseys drenched with sweat clearly indicating the intensity of their effort. The tall teenager with distinctive green hair smoothly executed his shooting motion, a ball conspicuously absent from his grip. The shorter, black-haired companion's eyes lit up, attentively observing the green-haired player's form as he deftly dribbled the ball. In a burst of excitement, he exclaimed, "This is it!" At the precise moment, the black-haired teenager delivered a precise pass to the green-haired player, who effortlessly launched a beautifully arcing shot toward the basket. The ball swished through the net, prompting an exclamation of satisfaction. "Whoa! Finally!" Adjusting his glasses, the green-haired player nodded in contentment. Suddenly, the gymnasium door swung open, and a tall teenager with black hair entered, his expression furrowing upon seeing the two still engaged. "Midorima, Takao, you both pushed yourselves too hard. We can't afford our key players having sore muscles for the third round tomorrow." "Ah, Captain! Don't be too rigid, haha." Takao approached Atsubo, attempting to ease the tension with a light-hearted comment. However, Atsubo's irritation persisted as he sternly stated, "And you're training this instant, though I admire both of your enthusiasm. We need to secure our ticket to the semi-final tomorrow." Perceiving Atsubo's genuine anger, Midorima let out a resigned sigh while Takao could only awkwardly scratch his head. "Well, we're done with our training anyway. So, we'll get going, Captain." Takao nervously laughed as he ushered Midorima out, leaving the gym in haste. Observing their departure, Atsubo shook his head lightly before casting a thoughtful glance at the basketball still bouncing on the court. "They've got a new trick, huh? Interesting." In another corner of Tokyo, a team was deeply engrossed in their training drills. However, they maintained a lighter intensity, refraining from pushing themselves too hard to ensure they were in peak condition for the challenges awaiting them tomorrow. Their collective gaze remained unwavering, each player fully immersed and focused on their training. This dedication was particularly evident in one player, a blonde-haired individual who drew in a deep breath. "Focus up!" Kazumatsu's authoritative shout reverberated, met with a resounding affirmation from the team as they diligently continued their training. Before long, their drills reached a conclusion, and the players took a well-deserved break on the benches lining the side of the court. Kaijo's coach nodded approvingly at the disciplined effort of his team. "Great job, everyone! We've got a significant match ahead. No extra training on your own today, we can't afford any of you having sore muscles tomorrow." "Noted, coach." Loud affirmations echoed as the players took a moment to rehydrate, some drinking water while others wiped away their sweat with towels provided by the assistant. However, Kaijo's coach's satisfaction turned into a frown as he noticed their ace still on the court, seemingly lost in thought while gazing at the basketball in his hands. He exchanged a concerned glance with Kasumatsu, who nodded in response, signaling his intention to approach Kai's. "Captain." As Kasumatsu approached, Kai seemed to register his presence. Observing Kai's demeanor, Kasumatsu couldn't help but frown, restraining the impulse to give Kai a light tap with a punch or kick. Shaking his head, he asked, "What's wrong with you?" Kai, typically the lively one, bore a different expression. His face held an unusual calm and solemnity. "I don't know." "What?" "No, I mean, I don't know what to feel." Kazumatsu's frown deepened as he inquired, "What do you mean?" Sighing, Kai released the ball in his hand, presenting Kasumatsu with his trembling hands as he spoke, "We'll be playing against someone that even Ayaminuka couldn't defeat." The memories of Ayamine defeating him during the Inter-High still haunted Kai. Now, he was on the verge of facing someone who had defeated Ayamine, the one who had bested him. I've played a few times against him in his place, and he was really a monster. That bad? Nodding in response to Kazumatsu's question, Kai's admitted, if Ayaminuka was a tiger cub, Kazumaki was a dragon. How is that even a fair comparison? Kasumatsu retorted, twitching his mouth at Kai's nonsensical analogy. I'm not sure if I'm afraid, not sure if I'm excited either. Kai's continued, his gaze fixated on his trembling hands, indifferent to Kazumatsu's reaction. In response to Kai's contemplative state, Kasumatsu sighed heavily. Suddenly, annoyance flashed across his face, and he swiftly kicked Kai's on the butt, sending him crashing to the ground. Shocked, Kai's quickly regained his composure, standing up with a hint of anger. Again? Why do you always keep doing these things? He exclaimed indignantly. Unfazed by Kai's burst of anger, Kasumatsu shook his head, returning to where the others were resting. Fucking stupid, why can't you just be both? Hey! Kazumatsu's words hung in the air, prompting Kai's to widen his eyes in disbelief. He looked down at his hand, which had stopped trembling. Right, why can't I be both excited and afraid at the same time? He mumbled to himself. A sudden chuckle erupted from Kai's in the middle of the court, drawing puzzled looks from everyone on Kaijo, who regarded him with a mix of pity and concern as if questioning his sanity. Meanwhile, Kasumatsu wore a satisfied smile, observing Kai's reaction. He addressed the others, let's go, just leave him alone for now. Glances were exchanged among the team members as they nodded at each other and departed from the court. Chapter 194, Chapter 192, Buzzing with Excitement. The following day, the gymnasium buzzed with anticipation as a wave of spectators poured in to witness the quarter-final match of the Winter Cup. Excitement permeated the air, with everyone eagerly looking forward to the game unfolding before them. Whoa! Kai's is playing today. Oh? Kaijo High? I'm sure they will win. The chatter of teenage girls echoed through the gymnasium, their voices carrying the fervent cheers for Kaijo High. Kai's was a well-known model, and he had garnered significant fame among young ladies in Japan, automatically propelling his team, Kaijo High, into the limelight. Hey? These Feng girls are quite optimistic, Fukuda Sogo is no easy opponent. Agree, they even won against Yasen High. As expected, Fukuda Sogo, dubbed the Dark Horse in the Inter-High, had garnered a following after their triumphant journey through the tournament, ultimately securing the title of King of Kings. The team's formidable reputation had earned them a dedicated fan base who exuded confidence in their abilities, especially with a captain who had defeated the ace and the center of the generation of miracles to emerge victorious. They were confident that Fukuda Sogo would emerge victorious once again in the Winter Cup. Nobody's talking about our game, hey. Kagan aside, his steps accompanying those of his Siren teammates as they made their way to the designated changing room. It's not like we're famous or anything. Kyoshi chimed in with a wry smile. As soon as Kyoshi's words settled, a burst of exclamations followed them through the crowd of people. Whoa! It's Siren! Siren? The one with the iron heart. Oh, right, that's the Iron Heart. The crowd's attention shifted to Siren, fingers pointing at them, and particularly at Kyoshi, a part of the uncrowned kings, making their way through the sea of spectators. The murmurings caught Kyoshi's attention, and a strange sense of satisfaction flickered across his face. He couldn't resist muttering with a silly smile on his face, hee, we're not famous, I am. Hyga stood nearby, his mouth twitching in speechless disbelief as he struggled to contain the urge to smack Kyoshi on the head. He shook his head, glancing around and noticing that most people were focusing on the game between Kaijo High and Fukuda Sogo. Besides, I can understand their excitement for the game between these two. After all, this is another big match. You're right. I wonder if Kai's will be able to win against Fukuda Sogo's captain. Izuki mused, putting his hand on his chin in a thoughtful manner. The group continued discussing the upcoming game between Kaijo High and Fukuda Sogo, their voices weaving through the air. Meanwhile, Kuroko remained in silence, lost in his own contemplation about the same question. As much as he had yearned to defeat Ayamine back then, Kuroko couldn't fathom Ayamine losing to anyone. Yet, it happened. Kuroko's gaze wandered to Kagami, who noticed the scrutiny. Kagami tilted his head in confusion and asked, "What's up?" However, Kuroko remained silent, lost in thought. Despite his inability to envision Ayamine losing, it had occurred not only to Tsuna but also to Kagami. The same uncertainty loomed over Tsuna. Kuroko couldn't fathom Tsuna losing to anyone, especially after witnessing Tsuna's dominating performance against Murasakibara in the last game. Kuroko couldn't help but ponder, the only person that could render Murasakibara's defense useless besides Kazama was Akashi. But what if Kai's managed to secure a victory this time? Sighing, Kuroko decided to refrain from delving too deeply into matters beyond his comprehension. Witnessing Kuroko's sigh, Kagami became even more perplexed about Kuroko's peculiar behavior as he scratched his head. Then, let's ask Kuroko. He knows them both better. Kagane suggested, breaking the momentary silence. Kuroko was pulled back to reality and turned towards Kagane with a confused expression, awaiting the inquiry that was about to come his way. Kagane flashed a cheeky smile at Kuroko and asked, "Kuroko, who do you think will win between them?" All attention instantly shifted towards Kuroko as they continued walking. Kuroko, taken aback, hesitated before responding, "Honestly, I don't know." The collective sighs and shrugged shoulders from the group reflected their disappointment. Hyuga sighed and remarked, "Even Kuroko couldn't provide a definitive answer, hey? That's unfortunate." Despite the team's excitement and spirited discussions about the potential victor between Kai's and Tsuna, they found themselves unable to reach a consensus. However, seeing this, Kuroko shook his head and muttered, "I can't imagine Kazama losing to anyone." Kuroko had always considered Tsuna and Akashi as extraordinary individuals, defying common sense. The thought of such formidable opponents made him unconsciously clench his fist tightly. Though he acknowledged their prowess, a part of him still yearned to prevail against them. What? The collective steps of everyone came to an abrupt stop as they sharply turned toward Kuroko, who had just uttered those words. Kagami, in particular, seemed to anticipate such a response as Tsuna's commanding presence flashed in his mind. The memory of Tsuna dominating the matches, even against someone of Murasakibara's caliber, was still vivid. As much as Kagami respected Kai's and wished for his victory to settle matters between Kaijo and Sirin, he found himself in the same shoes as Kuroko. The idea of such a formidable individual losing was inconceivable. Clap. As they were about to delve further into the discussion, a sharp clap echoed in the air, pulling them back to reality. All eyes turned towards Aida, who had just clapped her hands loudly. Seeing that she had captured everyone's attention, Aida sighed before speaking, "It's useless to discuss matters beyond our control. Our third round match is the earliest today. Let's redirect our focus and delve into our strategy." Hearing this, a collective sense of awkwardness washed over the group, evident in their sheepish head-scratching. Well, I can't deny that these discussions are undeniably exciting, with two formidable players about to face each other. Aida continued. She smiled, gesturing toward their changing room behind her, and added, "But we must secure a victory in our match before indulging in such conversations. Let's go in, I'll brief you on what to expect today." Aida led the way into the changing room, and one by one, the group followed, the scolding having the magical effect of shifting their focus back to the impending game. As the Siren team entered the changing room, a determined smile appeared on their faces. The prevailing thought among them was simple. Whichever team wins this match will just be another opponent Siren has to beat eventually. So, there's no point in speculating on who will come out on top. Chapter 195, Chapter 193, Unusual Behavior. Following a brief discussion in the changing room, the Siren High made their way onto the court, ready to face off against their formidable opponent. Observing the determined expressions on the faces of the Siren players, Aida was pleasantly surprised. "I guess I was worried for nothing." She couldn't help but smile, realizing that her initial worries about potential distractions from their earlier discussion were unfounded. The team appeared to have wholeheartedly set aside any concerns and was entirely focused on the upcoming game. Taking note of the opponent's lineup, Aida's smile widened as she confidently declared, "We will take this round." As the first game commenced, the atmosphere in the gymnasium reached a fever pitch. The spectators, though eagerly anticipating the much-anticipated clash between Fukuda Sogo and Kaijo High, they still found themselves captivated by the Siren team's spirited performance. The crowd's cheers reverberated throughout the gym, creating an electric atmosphere that added to the intensity of the match. "Hey, looks like Siren is up," Takao exclaimed as he strolled through the crowd, making his way to their seats with the Shotoku players. Atsubo glanced at Siren's opponents and remarked, "They seem decent." "Kogomo North High. If I remember correctly, they're from Niigata. Word is, they made it to the final league in their prefecture, so they might be tough competition," Miyagi added. Midorima silently adjusted his glasses, holding a bicycle helmet in his hand without saying a word. Why not wear it, Shin? Takao suddenly asked, pointing at the helmet. Midorima frowned, stating, Don't be stupid, Takao. Lucky items are not meant to be worn. Then why bother bringing it with you? I brought it with me simply because it was my lucky item, you fool. Their bickering continued, prompting the others to shake their heads and sigh. They're at it again. Miyagi commented to Atsubo, who nodded before glancing back at the Siren vs. Kogomo North High game. Seems like Siren is currently in their prime, hey. Atsubo muttered, glancing at Kagami as he effortlessly broke through Kogomo North's defense, passing the ball to Kiyoshi, who leaped and slammed it into the basket. Having observed Siren's progress after their victory over 2 Academy, Atsubo acknowledged their significant improvement. While Shadoko had never underestimated them from the start, the continuous growth was still impressive. As Shadoko settled into their seats, a sudden commotion erupted in the crowd, capturing their attention. Gasps of surprise and admiration rippled through the gymnasium like a wave. Whoa! It's the King of Kings! Whispers and talk buzzed around the gym as a bunch of teens sporting jackets with a bold Fukuda Sogo Academy strolled through the crowd, heading for an empty section that stuck out like a sore thumb. Seriously, did they hog the whole section again? Classic Fukuda Sogo move, I guess. The crowd was left in disbelief at Fukuda Sogo's audacious move. Reserving an entire section just for themselves was a bold statement. Even with the whole team settled in, there were still plenty of empty seats. Initially thinking they pulled this stunt only at the Winter Cup's kickoff, the onlookers now realized they were dead wrong as Fukuda Sogo repeated the feat, leaving everyone scratching their heads at the team's over-the-top flair. They're as imposing as always, hey. Atsubo remarked as he found himself momentarily at a loss for words. The Shadoko players shared a collective sense of speechlessness. Their attention fixated on the Fukuda Sogo team led by Tsuna as they took their seats. True to form, Tsuna claimed the front row with Nijimura and Alexandra on his side while the rest of the team settled in behind them. Midorima's disapproval manifested in a frown, and he clicked his tongue in irritation. What a show-off! He muttered under his breath. In contrast, Takao burst into hearty laughter, thoroughly amused by the spectacle. Never a dull moment with these guys, he chuckled, enjoying the theatrics. However, amid the general buzz and excitement, the members of Fukuda Sogo appeared visibly taken aback, their eyes collectively widening in shock as they focused on a particular individual. Stop looking at me like that, you bastards! It's annoying, Haizaki grumbled, scratching his head in annoyance. Ever since they left their hotel, his teammates had been giving him strange looks without any attempt to hide their curiosity. Nijimura shook his head, glancing back at Haizaki. He understood their reactions because he, too, was surprised by what he had heard earlier when they were preparing to leave for Yoyogi Gymnasium. Earlier that day, as was their routine, Fukuda Sogo had awakened early. After hydrating, they headed to the gym to run on the treadmill. This ritual was deeply ingrained in their bodies and souls, a practice so automatic that they would likely perform it even while sleepwalking. Everyone proceeded to the gym, each taking their place on a treadmill and beginning their run. After finishing their workout, Haizaki surprised everyone by approaching Tsuna, who was calmly drinking water with a towel draped over his shoulder. Captain, Haizaki spoke hesitantly, clearly struggling with his words. Tsuna turned to face Haizaki, his expression prompting him to continue without uttering a word. Yet, Haizaki found it difficult to make eye contact with Tsuna, his discomfort evident. If you don't want to talk, just go grab some breakfast, Tsuna suggested, shaking his head as he started to walk away, leaving Haizaki on his own. Seemingly torn, Haizaki gritted his teeth and suddenly yelled, Captain! Tsuna frowned as he turned. Meanwhile, the curiosity in the room grew. Everyone had been prepared to head out for breakfast, but Haizaki's unexpected behavior had piqued their interest. Can I? Haizaki began, looking away as he caught Tsuna's nonchalant expression, a demeanor everyone in the team was familiar with. Tsuna's annoyance was palpable, and he was on the verge of urging Haizaki to speak his mind. However, before he could do so, Nijimura stepped forward and smacked Haizaki on the head, voicing his frustration, What the hell is wrong with you? Just talk. Don't waste our captain's precious time, you. Surprisingly, Haizaki didn't react angrily to Nijimura's rebuke, a stark contrast from his usual demeanor. Even Nijimura, taken aback by the unusual response, widened his eyes in disbelief. Haizaki, though seemingly hesitant, still didn't speak up. Finally standing, Haizaki met Tsuna's now eased expression and bowed as he made an unexpected request, "Please let me swap positions with Agiwara, Captain." The room fell into a shocked silence at Haizaki's unexpected plea. Even Tsuna raised an eyebrow, visibly surprised by the unusual request. Chapter 196, Chapter 194, Making their way to the stage. This chapter serves as an experiment for me. After reading Wandering Warrior of Wudang, I couldn't help but wonder if readers would enjoy this type of comedy in web novels. Do you think the world ending is near? Mochizuki whispered to Ishida, prompting a thoughtful furrow in Ishida's brow. Frowning, Ishida responded, "I think so, yet." Across various scriptures scattered around the planet, signs pointing toward the world's demise had been chronicled, and for them, Haizaki's bowing down his head only served to confirm these ominous premonitions. "At least try to lower your voice if you're gonna talk behind my back, you crazy motherfuckers," Haizaki grumbled, a mix of irritation and disbelief edged across his face as he overheard the hushed conversation between Mochizuki and Ishida. In response, Agiwara couldn't resist chuckling, reaching over to give Haizaki an encouraging pat on the shoulder. "Buddy, even if you didn't ask, I'd gladly vacate my spot for you." Turning to face Agiwara, Haizaki was met with a thumbs up and a bright smile, prompting a resigned sigh from him. Despite the persistent frustration induced by their antics, Haizaki couldn't deny that he had grown accustomed to this peculiar group. Their exasperating behavior had somehow become a familiar aspect of his life. Tsuna shook his head in amazement as he glanced back at the court. Siren had just finished the third quarter with a score of 68-47. Even though they weren't as dominating as they were in the second round, Tsuna could sense a strong focus from each player. He shook his head again and turned his attention to Kuroko and Kagami. "These guys are really something, hey?" Tsuna said to himself. He couldn't complain, though, considering he also got lucky by reincarnating into this world. He smiled, finding it amusing. Pretty adorable, actually. Whether it was plot armor or whatever else, Tsuna had carefully set up each piece on his board, with Haizaki being the last one. If Haizaki could grow and overcome his challenges this time, he would be the final piece in Tsuna's plan. Tsuna got up, and the rest of the team followed suit without him having to ask. He nodded in satisfaction at their unspoken agreement. "It's finally our turn, hey?" Nijimura remarked, breaking the brief silence that enveloped the group. "I got bored watching. Haha, let's go defeat Kaijo High." The atmosphere buzzed with cheerful banter as Tsuna led the team toward Fukuda Sogo's assigned changing room. Laughter and excitement filled the air as they approached their destination. Upon reaching the room, Nijimura stepped forward, holding the door open for Tsuna to enter first. Once inside and settled, all eyes turned to Tsuna, anticipation etched on their faces, as he began to address the team. "Well, we have quite a strong team today." Tsuna's voice filled the room, setting the stage for the challenge that awaited them on the court. Everyone nodded with serious expressions, but a gleam of uncontained excitement sparkled in their eyes. Moving into the second round and beyond, they were aware that every opponent would either be a member of the Generation of Miracles or someone formidable enough to challenge them, much like Siren had. A simmering eagerness ran through their veins, fueled by the anticipation of finally satisfying their thirst for competition. "And we're going to make a little adjustment to our default formation." Tsuna's announcement prompted a subtle brightening of Haizaki's expression. However, Tsuna's following words brought a steely resolve to the forefront. "Agiwara, I need you to take on Haizaki's position." "Got it, Captain." "Haizaki seems to have some unfinished business, so Shigehiro Agiwara, his best friend, will pave the way for him to complete his quest," Agiwara declared solemnly, earning nods of approval from Mochizuki and Ishida, both sporting satisfied expressions. In contrast to his usual response filled with curse words, Haizaki remained silent, his mind preoccupied with thoughts of Kai's. "Ha ha ha, these brats are actually really funny." On the side, Alexandra laughed heartily while Tsuna and Nijimura could only watch with a sigh. "Well, it's kind of my fault," Tsuna thought quietly. Things were pretty normal for the team before their trip to the States, but there had been a noticeable change since they came back. Nijimura nodded in agreement. "I guess feeling helpless and going through tough times can really change a person, hey?" Tsuna cleared his throat, redirecting their attention as he started talking about what to expect from Kaijo High and their game plan. Even though it might look like Tsuna was responding to Haizaki's unsaid request, it was actually part of his original plan. He didn't see the need to spell it out for Haizaki, thinking it might just embarrass him more. Tsuna thought this approach would be better, creating the impression that he was doing Haizaki a favor, and it might come in handy later, which led him to break into his signature smirk. The sudden smirk from Tsuna prompted reactions from the team. Mochizuki, Ishida, and Agiwara huddled together, attempting to decipher the hidden meaning. "Do you think the captain is plotting something again?" Mochizuki whispered, the concern evident in his voice. Ishida nodded knowingly, remarking, "There's no other option. When he puts on that smirk, someone is definitely going to suffer." "I agree." Agiwara concurred. Haizaki's annoyed voice cut through the whispered conversation, "Why did you pull me into this freaking nonsense?" Meanwhile, Tsuna and Nijimura just silently observed the four of them forming a circle, engrossed in what seemed like a serious discussion. "Well, that's all. Let's head out to the court." Tsuna shook his head as they all left their changing room to get to the court. As Fukuda Sogo finally stepped onto the court, a wave of restlessness swept through the crowd. "They've arrived. Our king. I'm sure they'll dominate this round again." Excited murmurs spread like wildfire among the fans, each person eagerly watching Tsuna as he led Fukuda Sogo Academy onto the stage designated for their third-round showdown against Kaijo High. As Fukuda Sogo entered, the gymnasium buzzed with another surge of energy as Kaijo High also made their way in, intensifying the atmosphere to new heights. Kai's attention immediately zeroed in on Tsuna, who appeared nonchalant as ever while leading Fukuda Sogo. This sight fueled Kai's determination, causing him to tightly grip his fist with unwavering resolve. On the other hand, Haizaki mirrored Kai's intensity as he spotted him. However, the fact that Kai's didn't even spare him a glance stoked a fiery anger within Haizaki, prompting him to clench his fist in frustration. "You'll be my stepping stone to prove Akashi wrong, Kai's," Haizaki declared with a simmering determination. Chapter 197, Chapter 195, Get Through Me First. Whoa, the crowd seems really hyped up for the next match. Obviously, it's the big match for the day. It's still kinda surprising to see everyone so pumped, though. The Siren freshmen exchanged words, glancing around the gym. Their recent game had just concluded with a decisive victory, the scoreboard reading 94-67. This win not only wrapped up their current match but also guaranteed their advancement to the next stage. "Well, I guess we should stick around to catch their game, hey?" Izuki suggested, a small smile playing on his lips as he observed Fukuda Sogo making their entrance. Kyoji grinned and nodded. "Absolutely, we've got to see who our opponents will be in the next round." The impending game carried significant weight, as its outcome would unveil Siren's next opponent in the tournament. They grasped the importance of this match, recognizing that knowing their opponent in advance allowed ample time for strategic planning and countermeasures against any tactics employed. Haiga also nodded, his gaze lifting as he spotted another group of players walking onto the court. Kagami turned his attention, casting a quick glance at Tsuna's figure on the other side of the entrance. After a brief moment, he refocused on his path, noting the arrival of Kaijo High as they made their way onto the court. The intensity radiating from Kai's caught Kagami off guard. He pondered, I guess he should be this focused, especially since he's about to face Kazama, hey. Kuroko observed Kai's with a serious expression. Initially gazing in the opposite direction of the entrance, Kai's noticed a strong gaze as he shifted his focus upon realizing that Siren was making their way out. His eyes met Kagami's and Kuroko's as they walked past each other with Kaijo. As they crossed paths, Kuroko left a remark, let's see each other in the next round, Kai's. A small but genuine smile brightened Kai's face in response to Kuroko's words. He refocused on his opponent, his determination evident, and replied with solemnity, I'll try my best, Kurokaki. As both teams finally stepped onto the court, the referee prompted them to line up and engage in the customary pre-match greeting. Following the brief exchange of pleasantries, the referee announced that both teams were granted some time to warm up on their respective sides of the court. Without hesitation, both teams seamlessly transitioned into their familiar warm-up routines, the gymnasium filling with the rhythmic sounds of basketballs bouncing and the swish of nets as players prepared for the impending clash. Whoa, another exciting game to watch. Could you please refrain yourself a little bit, Kotaro? So inelegant. Ha ha ha, let him be, Mibuchi. The uncrowned kings from Rakuzan arrived at the scene, with Akashi leading them to their seats. Akashi shifted his gaze toward Siren, who were finding some empty seats to watch the game. He thought, it was unexpected, Tetsuya. To think you'd be able to go this far. Shaking his head, he dismissed the thought, deciding that it didn't really matter to him. Akashi, who do you think will win between these two? Hayama asked with excitement as they settled into their seats. The question prompted Akashi to shift his attention back to the court, where Fukuda Sogo was engaged in their warm-up routine. He replied, "Isn't it obvious?" "Is it really?" Kotaro tilted his head in confusion. Akashi's gaze sharpened as he located Tsuna's figure on the court. He responded with conviction, "No one else could defeat him but me." Akashi never considered the other members of the Generation of Miracles as true opponents. He held unwavering confidence in his abilities, especially when combined with the Emperor Eyes making him an unstoppable force. From the tournament's inception, Akashi viewed it as his own stage, a platform where he would absolutely bring his opponents to their knees. In the same vein, just as Akashi was confident in his ability to outshine the other Generation of Miracles, he also held a firm belief in Tsuna's capacity to triumph over them. And the only one who could beat Tsunayashi was only me. With unyielding conviction, he pondered this thought, shifting his gaze toward the other side where Kaijo was engaged in their warm-up routine. Akashi observed Kai's apparent excitement at the prospect of facing Tsuna. However, with an understanding of Tsuna's typical playing style, Akashi could only shake his head in pity. Tsuna will not be his opponent, at least not until Kai's can defeat Haizaki. What? The players from Shodoku expressed surprise at Midorima's comment. "Shin, how do you know that?" Takao inquired, prompting Midorima to shake his head as he responded, "Fool, it was obvious. He always does that, doesn't he? Against Yasunhai, he'll let Senior Nijimura suppress Murasakibara first." Midorima continued, earning an exclamation of realization from Shodoku's players. "Ah, now that you mention it, that's exactly what he did." Miyagi nodded with a thoughtful expression as he recalled the game between Fukuda Sogo and Yasunhai. Atsubo added, "And he only personally took care of Murasakibara until Nijimura was unable to hold the big guy back." "That's right," Midorima responded with a subtle frown, adjusting his glasses. His thoughts echoed, "Still, that was only the cover and not yet the actual content." Midorima realized that Tsuna's strategies went beyond what was immediately apparent. Tsuna always operated with a clear goal in mind. However, the various factors at play in the game made it difficult to discern Tsuna's true intentions. The multitude of variables created a puzzle that made it challenging to pinpoint Tsuna's precise intentions, leaving Midorima without a clear understanding of Tsuna's actual agenda in the game. However, undeterred by the complexity of the situation, Midorima was resolute in his determination to unravel Tsuna's plot. Meanwhile, on the court, Kai's moved toward Tsuna, who had just executed a successful shot, sending the ball through the net with a satisfying swish. Sensing an approaching presence, Tsuna turned to find Kai's making his way towards him, eliciting an amused smile. "Raida, hey! Kazamaki, I'll beat you this time!" Kai's declared with determination. Tsuna chuckled, shaking his head as he replied, "You're a bit too excited, Raida. Besides, you won't be playing against me. We have someone on our team who's eager to face you so badly." Tsuna continued, alluding to another figure arriving on the scene, prompting Kai's eyes to widen in surprise before shifting into a frown. "Shogo? Fine." Haizaki grinned at Kai's. However, his gaze wasn't playful, it held a strong determination to thoroughly crush Kai's this time. Playfully, Haizaki spoke, "Hey there, Raida. I'm sorry, but you gotta beat me first to play against our captain. Though, I'll beat you first before you beat me." Haizaki's playful tone vanished, replaced by a deep, intense tone that heightened the atmosphere between the two figures. They locked gazes, tension simmering between them. Chapter 198, Chapter 196, Fukuda Sogo vs Kaijo Hai. However, the tense atmosphere was shattered by a flying kick aimed at Kai's, leaving his face twisted in disbelief as he crashed to the ground. Haizaki widened his eyes, momentarily shocked into silence. He couldn't help but twitch his lips slightly as he watched Kai's sprawled on the ground. Eventually, Kai's regained his composure, propelled forward, and pointed an angry finger at the one who kicked him. He shouted, "Just what the heck are you doing, Captain? You might kill me, you jerk." However, Kasumatsu completely disregarded Kai's, shifting his attention toward Tsuna. Tsuna shook his head with amusement as he approached Kasumatsu, extending his hand for a handshake. "Yukio Kasumatsu, right? It's a pleasure to meet you." I'm Tsunayoshi Kazama, Fukuda Sogo's captain. I'm your senior, freshman. Kasumatsu frowned as he reprimanded, but he still shook Tsuna's hand firmly. Well, nice to meet you nonetheless. Haizaki silently observed Kaijo Hai's captain, who dared to reprimand Tsuna. However, as he looked at Tsuna's calm expression, Haizaki noticed that it didn't bother him in the slightest, prompting him to raise his eyebrows in surprise. Meanwhile, Kai struggled to comprehend what had just unfolded. Did I just get ignored? The audacious kick sent him crashing to the ground, and not only did the assailant ignore him, but Tsuna also did the same. Kai exclaimed with a hurt expression, "Why did you ignore me too? At least, try to help me, you heartless bastard." Turning back to Tsuna and Kazumatsu's exchange. Tsuna recognized the cultural emphasis on formality and hierarchy in Japan, understanding Kazumatsu's stance. However, he felt no obligation to conform, having been raised with a different cultural background. Despite the potential offense that could arise due to his family's standing, Tsuna wasn't the least bit bothered. He found it refreshing to encounter someone behaving in a more casual manner, as opposed to the usual polite demeanor extended to him by those in positions of power in Japan. I hope you can make an exception for me, I'm not quite familiar with Japanese culture. Tsuna shook his head as he responded. Now that you mention it, I think Kai said something about this. Well, alright then. Kasumatsu frowned, easing his expression and shrugging his shoulders as he recalled Tsuna's origin. Tsuna smiled, adding, I appreciate your understanding. No, forget about it. I should apologize. Anyway, let's have a good game and have fun. Kazumatsu's face broke into a smile. Sure, let's have fun. Tsuna and Haizaki continued their warm-up, while Kasumatsu returned to his team, dragging along a sulking Kais. As the moment for the game to start approached, the referee signaled both teams to get ready. It's about to begin, hey. A bored voice resonated as a dark-haired teenager strolled through the audience, following a pink-haired girl who energetically signaled that she had found their seats. Daiki. Here. Mamwa shouted with enthusiasm. Aomine let out a sigh as he settled into his seat, his gaze fixed on the court where players were positioning themselves for the imminent start of the game. The growing restlessness in the crowd irked Aomine, prompting a disapproving click of his tongue. He muttered, so noisy. Of course they're noisy, they're eager to watch this game so bad, after all. Mamwa chimed in, her eyes lighting up in delight at the sight of Tsuna on the court. Well, you're right. Aomine conceded with a sigh. However, a gleam of focus appeared in his eyes as he observed the referee making his way to the center point of the court, signaling that the game was about to commence. Both teams poised for the game, the referee blew the whistle, and the ball soared into the air. Nijimura's eyes gleamed with determination as he leaped forward, Moriyama hot on his heels. However, Nijimura was the first to reach the ball, deftly pushing it toward Tsuna, who was closely marked by Kasumatsu. Tsuna dribbled the ball with a relaxed ease, Kasumatsu closing the distance rapidly to apply pressure. This guy is a monster, hey. Kasumatsu pondered, feeling the palpable tension and the weight of marking a player of Tsuna's caliber. Kaijo Hai had meticulously studied Fukuda Sogo through game footage, delving into each player's strategies and tendencies. The conclusion drawn was that the most formidable adversary among these strong players stood right in front of Kasumatsu. Even though Tsuna seemed relaxed while dribbling, Kasumatsu couldn't help but break into a sweat, realizing the imminent challenge. However, Kasumatsu quickly discerned that Tsuna was not to be underestimated. As he attempted to make a move, the pace subtly altered, ready to thwart any attempt to steal the ball from Tsuna's hands. He's waiting for the others. Kasumatsu silently concluded as he observed Tsuna carefully assessing the situation on the court. Kasumatsu extended his observation to note that Fukuda Sogo players had strategically positioned themselves in his team's defensive formation. I have to be wary of his quick passes, right? I should try to guess who he will pass the ball to. His eyes sharpened as he fully focused on Tsuna's movements and gestures. When Tsuna suddenly changed his pace, Kasumatsu knew it was time to act, tensing up his body for the impending challenge. Tsuna's eyes locked onto Haizaki, marked by Kai's, as he accelerated his dribble, flicking his hand to transform the ball into a blur that seemed to vanish. Kazumatsu's eyes flashed as he anticipated the pass, moving precisely when Tsuna's hand was about to release the ball. He positioned himself to intercept the pass, aligning with the direction of Tsuna's gaze. Much to his surprise, Kasumatsu found that the ball didn't follow his expectations. A resounding dunk echoed through the court, and he widened his eyes in disbelief as he turned to see Nijimura's figure gracefully landing on the ground after executing a powerful alley oop, their signature combo. Whoa! Zenith strike at the start. This is so hype! The gymnasium erupted in a chorus of cheers, the excitement of the crowd resonating throughout the entire space. Meanwhile, the Kaijo High players, expecting an immediate clash between Kais and Hizaki, were also taken aback. What? Kasumatsu was stunned. He thought he had correctly guessed the passing direction, but how did it end up with Nijimura instead? If you look at me so intently, I might get the wrong idea, Captain. However, Tsuna just smirked at the guy as he walked back to get into his position. And as Nijimura walked past Kasumatsu's stunned figure, he spoke, "Well, I know these guys have some beef between them, but please don't forget about me." Chapter 199, Chapter 197, Taking his move. Watching it happen, Amin just laughed a bit and shook his head. "Poor guy, Tsuna was just messing with him," he remarked. Although, Amin was pretty sure they'd figure it out later. At the same time, Momoa seemed lost in thought. She thought it was a bit early for Tsuna to be so aggressive. While he did have his moments, he wasn't usually the type to talk to someone like he did with Kasumatsu. Even though she was far away, Momoa could tell Tsuna said something to him. It got her thinking that there had to be a reason for Tsuna's actions. "I don't understand what he's up to." Confusion swirled in Momoa's thoughts as she couldn't quite grasp Tsuna's intentions. A smile played on her lips, and her eyes sparkled with excitement, unable to look away from Tsuna's figure. As if sensing her intense gaze, Tsuna turned to the audience, locking eyes with her. Caught off guard, Momoa felt a rush of embarrassment flood her cheeks. Despite this, Tsuna flashed her a smile before redirecting his attention to the court, causing her heart to race. "I probably shouldn't have stared at him so intensely," she mumbled with a voice as soft as a mosquito's buzz, her face tinged with a deep shade of red. Back on the court, Tsuna turned towards Nijimura, acknowledging his efforts. "Good job, Shuzo." Nijimura was somewhat bashful as he scratched his head in response to Tsuna's compliment. "Well, it's nothing much. I just did what you told me to." "No, what you did was crucial for the game." However, Tsuna recognized the significance of Nijimura's contribution. As he observed Kasumatsu's intensified gaze fixed on him, Tsuna couldn't help but break into his signature smirk, causing Nijimura to flinch at the side. In the midst of this exchange, Kaijo High gained possession of the ball, smoothly passing it to Kasumatsu. He advanced deliberately with his team, strategically infiltrating Fukuda Sogo's defensive formation. "They're doing their usual formation." Analyzing the situation, Kasumatsu's eyes narrowed as he deciphered Fukuda Sogo's default man-to-man defense, a strategy they consistently employed. There was an underlying concern among Kaijo's coach and the team, wary of the possibility that Fukuda Sogo might utilize a defensive tactic akin to Murasakibara's absolute defensive zone, as demonstrated against Yasenhai in their previous match. In this setup, Nijimura assumed a role similar to Murasakibara. Yet, Kasumatsu recognized the potential downside. Implementing such a strategy demanded Nijimura to be in a constant state of alertness, posing a significant risk of depleting his stamina rapidly. Recalling Fukuda Sogo's last game, Kasumatsu was pretty sure that if things continued without Tsuna and Murasakibara entering the zone, Nijimura wouldn't last until the end, no matter how good his stamina was. "Good, then, if I can break past his defense, scoring is practically guaranteed," Kasumatsu thought as Tsuna closed the distance, applying pressure. His muscles tensed as he felt the impact of Tsuna's defensive prowess crashing into him. Kasumatsu struggled to find an opening, realizing, "That is if I can break past." Who would have thought a high schooler's defense would be this good? With a burst of agility, Kasumatsu quickened his pace, the squeak of his sneakers echoing on the court. In a display of finesse, he executed a lightning-fast crossover, the ball dancing between his skilled hands as he darted to the left side. However, Tsuna moved in seamless synchronization, mirroring Kasumatsu's every step. Frustration crept into Kasumatsu's expression, and an audible click of the tongue betrayed his dissatisfaction. "It's not like I expected this to work anyway," Kasumatsu thought, his mind momentarily flickering with doubt. Feeling the pressure, Kasumatsu decided to shift the dynamics. In a sudden and unexpected twist of his body, he unleashed a precise pass toward Kai's. Time seemed to slow as the ball traced a graceful arc, finding its mark with unerring accuracy. As Kai's received the pass, the court held its collective breath. Go crush him! Kai's! Kasumatsu shouted, prompting a confident smile from Kai's. Unbeknownst to Kasumatsu, Tsuna's lips curled up slightly as he observed Haizaki and Kai's. A deep breath followed, and Kai's expression shifted to one of unwavering determination. With the ball in his grasp, Kai's focused entirely, slowly dropping the ball and dribbling it with deliberate precision. Show me how good you've become, Ryota. Don't disappoint me. Haizaki tensed his body, preparing to react to Kai's advance. Ha, sure. With a glint of determination in his eyes, Kai's exploded into motion. His first step was a blur, and he appeared to be veering to the right, prompting Haizaki to react swiftly, adjusting his footing to cut off Kai's potential path. Yet, it was just a mere feint. In an instant, Kai smoothly transitioned, crossing over to the left with a sudden burst of agility that left Haizaki momentarily flat-footed. A faint click of the tongue echoed through the court as Haizaki shadowed Kai's every move, refusing to be deceived twice. As they neared the basket, Kai's unleashed a mesmerizing spin, a whirlwind of motion that caught Haizaki off guard. Kai slipped behind him in the blink of an eye, leaving Haizaki to pivot in surprise. The crowd held its breath as Kai's, seemingly defying gravity, ascended with a powerful leap. Whoa! That's intense. Kaijo won't go down without a fight. Let's go, Kai's. The subsequent dunk was nothing short of a thunderous spectacle. The ball met the rim with a resounding clash that echoed through the court, eliciting excitement from the captivated audience. Upon landing, Kai's turned towards Haizaki with a confident grin, locking eyes with Tsuna as if issuing a challenge to the entire court. I'll show you enough for the main boss to quickly show up. Kai's declared, not waiting for Haizaki's response before confidently strolling back to his position. Haizaki, visibly annoyed, tightly gripped his fist. However, he swiftly composed himself, recalling Kai's recent maneuver. Breaking into a wide grin, he licked his lips and turned towards Kai's returning figure. Well, it's not bad. Should I take it? Haizaki mused. Go forward, Shogo. A voice suddenly snapped him back to the current situation as he turned toward Tsuna and confusedly asked, What? Just do as I said, I'll pass the ball to you. You want a duel, right? Tsuna continued as he walked behind the baseline, retrieving the ball. Haizaki's eyes widened as he immediately burst forward quickly, prompting Tsuna to smile. With a quick flick of his hand, the ball blurred through the court, finding its mark in Haizaki's hand. Haizaki's anticipation cracked in the air as he observed the Kaijo players, who appeared to be flustered with the sudden pass. Well, let's try out that move from earlier. Among them, Kai's moved forward to confront his advance, making Haizaki's face break into the widest grin he could muster. Chapter 200, Chapter 198, Not even funny. That move looks familiar. Kagane exclaimed after witnessing Kai's successful dunk. Izuki nodded, affirming, I think that was Kagami's move during our first encounter with Kai's. Whoa! Really? I didn't expect that. To think Kai's could still copy that move from a long time ago. The freshmen at Siren erupted into exclamations upon learning about Izuki's revelation. Well, that was expected, isn't it? What Kai's had copied wouldn't go anywhere as long as he remembered it. Haiga remarked with a nod, prompting unanimous agreement from everyone present. However, Kuroko's gaze shifted to Haizaki, his concern evident as he observed Haizaki burst forward, seamlessly catching Tsuna's pass that appeared to teleport directly into Haizaki's hand. He glanced at Kai's, who was swiftly moving to intercept Haizaki. Haizaki might have stolen the move now, Kuroko muttered, a hint of worry in his voice. Meanwhile, on the court, Haizaki sprang into action the instant Kai's closed in, his instincts taking over. With a sudden veer to the right, he lured Kai's into his trap before executing a lightning-quick crossover to the left, leaving Kai's momentarily flustered by the feint. Kai's eyes widened with recognition, a realization flashing across his face. He stole that move. Anticipating Haizaki's next move, Kai's focus sharpened as he shadowed Haizaki's every step. As he was near the basket now, Haizaki initiated a rapid spin as his figure blurring with speed. In the blink of an eye, he slipped behind Kai's, setting the stage for a thrilling sequence of maneuvers. However, Kai's was already expecting the maneuver as he reacted with lightning reflexes. He immediately sidestepped, closing the distance between them. As Haizaki leaped for the basket, Kai's positioned himself to block. The clash was intense, and the crowd erupted into cheers and gasps. An annoyed click of the tongue escaped Hizaki's lips as he soared past Kai's attempted block. These measly blocks were not enough. Ryota! Hizaki shouted, his voice cutting through the excitement of the moment. Hizaki forcefully broke through Kai's defense as the resounding impact echoed through the court, leaving the crowd electrified by the intensity of the confrontation between these two formidable players. Whoa! He pulled off the same move. Holy cow, are they twins or something? They did the exact same thing. The crowd couldn't contain their surprise and amazement. Kai's and Hizaki had just pulled off an identical move, and the audience couldn't believe their eyes. Kasumatsu received the ball with a frown and began to dribble it forward slowly. Taking in the court situation, Kasumatsu sensed the mounting tension as Tsuna closed in to defend. Damn it, just with his presence alone made my whole body tensed up. Kasumatsu thought silently. But, that didn't throw him off at all. Dribbling the ball around his legs front, between, and behind. At the same time, his keen eyes scanned Tsuna's defense, searching for the slightest vulnerability or, if necessary, a chance to create one. Disappointment crossed Kasumatsu's face as he clicked his tongue audibly. Tsuna's defense seemed impenetrable. Shifting his focus, Kasumatsu decided to pass the ball instead, adjusting his dribbling pace. Unfortunately for Kasumatsu, Tsuna tracked his every move like a spectre. In a clever sleight, Kasumatsu feigned a pass to the left, successfully prompting Tsuna to react. However, it was a trick. Kasumatsu's eyes sparkled with a sly glint as he smoothly adjusted his body weight and redirected the ball to Kai's. A smile crept onto Kasumatsu's face as he thought, I'm glad he had quick reaction speed, it wouldn't have worked otherwise. With the ball back in his grip, Kai sensed Hizaki's relentless pressure closing in. Thinking about something, Kai's decided to try a way to shift the momentum. He initiated another feint, a deceptive move to the right before swiftly crossing over to the left. However, this time, Hizaki's defensive prowess came into play. A hand grazed the ball, causing it to slip from Kai's grip. Ha, that's not even funny. Hizaki's laughter echoed as he snatched the bouncing ball, seamlessly transitioning into an agile burst forward. Kai's clicked his tongue in frustration, immediately sprinting after Hizaki's figure. Trying to break Hizaki's defense and turn the game in Kaijo Hi's favor, Kai's had hoped to confidently use the stolen move, acting like Hizaki's act of changing the rhythm didn't matter. But things didn't go as planned. Kai's struggled to catch the rhythm of the stolen move, and the balance of momentum remained firmly in Hizaki's control. Sensing Kai's persistent presence closely shadowing his every move, Hizaki's mind churned with ideas. A mischievous spark lit up his eyes as he broke into a wide grin. As Hizaki approached the basket, he sensed Kai's close presence and swiftly spun around to shake him off. With wide eyes in disbelief, Kai's watched as Hizaki smoothly turned around his own body, leaving Kai's momentarily stunned. Hizaki moved with agility, skillfully maneuvering around Kai's back before leaping towards the basket. In a powerful display, he slammed the ball through the net. Unlike the previous attempt, where Kai's had anticipated Hizaki's moves, the unexpected twist caught him off guard this time, making it impossible to react in time to block Hizaki's dunk. As Hizaki landed, he glanced at Kai's, shaking his head in disappointment while mockingly said, "You think that will work against me? You're too naive. Though, it's not a bad idea, so I stole it." A chuckle escaped Hizaki's lips as he walked past Kai's, who stood there with widened eyes, absorbing the revelation of his own idea being turned against him. Walking back to his position, Hizaki couldn't resist glancing at Kai's, shaking his head in disbelief. Anger simmered within him as he thought, this guy? He's the one that Akashi told me would totally best me in the future. A scowl edged across Hizaki's face at the thought, and he turned his attention to the audience, specifically the section where Rakuzan High were seated. His eyes locked onto Akashi's figure, who didn't even spare him a glance. In a low mutter, Hizaki ceded, "That's not even a funny joke, you fucking bastard." Initially taken aback, Kai swiftly regained his composure. He drew a deep breath before directing his gaze at Hizaki. Even the mini-boss seemed to be a tough opponent, hey. He mused to himself. Sure, then. Kazumaki, I'll beat the mini-boss first. Just you wait. Kai's declared with an excited smile spreading across his face. His determination shone through as he fixed his gaze on Tsuna's figure.
Thanks for listening.